Good morning, everyone. My name is Evan Cope. I'm chairman of the Tennessee Higher Education Commission, and I want to take this opportunity to welcome everyone to our winter quarterly meeting. At the very beginning, we need to establish that we have a quorum, so I will call on Ms. Osborne to call the roll, please, ma'am.
Chairman Cope.
Here.
Mr. Kraus.
Here.
Dr. Dishner.
Here.
Secretary Hargett.
Here.
Dr. Hayburn. Ms. Kadir.
Here.
Mr. Lee. Ms. Coben.
Here.
Treasurer Lillard.
Here.
Ms. Roach.
Here.
Mayor Wharton.
Here.
Comptroller Wilson. Comptroller Wilson.
Not here.
Mr. Keith Wilson.
Here.
Mr. Chisenhall.
Here.
Mr. Chairman, we have a quorum.
Very good. Thank you. Next item on our agenda is approval of the minutes, and before you, and you should have all received prior to today's meeting, a copy of the agenda for today's meeting. And at this point in time, I'm happy to entertain a motion to adopt the agenda as presented.
So moved.
I have a motion from Mr. Wilson, a second from the treasurer. All in favor signify so by saying aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? The motion carries. All right. Next, I will make a few comments here. I want to first and foremost thank Keith Wilson for your hard work on this commission. For those of you who don't know, Keith is moving to the state of Virginia very soon, where he owns a farm, and he'll be living full-time in Virginia, which obviously makes him ineligible to continue to serve with us. And I'm sorry to say that, because it's been a pleasure having you on this commission, and we thank you.
There's a nice little community college up there that wants my attendance. So,
Mr. Chairman, I would like to say that if the Virginia Promise suddenly creeps up, we'll know who did that.
I'm working on it.
Just be sure to give credit where it's due. All
Okay.
right. What we have for you, the governor, on behalf of the governor, we have a token of our appreciation for your service, and I'd like to come over and present this to you, if that's okay. Mike, you want to come with me?
I do. It's en route.
They have to do this again for the so we get a photographer. But on behalf of the governor, this is a certificate of appreciation for your service and dedication to the commission.
Appreciate that.
You're
very
welcome.
much.
Yeah.
Oops.
Here she is.
Photo op.
You're going to be Twitter famous.
Thank you. As some of you also know, we have some vacancies on the commission that are scheduled to be filled. Obviously, we will have to find someone to fill Keith's shoes, which won't be an easy task. But also, as I mentioned last time, David Kustoff from the 9th Congressional District is now a member of Congress, and we'll be looking to fill his seat in addition to Pam Martin's seat here in the near future. Today's meeting, we have some really important things to discuss and consider. One of those is shoring up our administrative policies, THEC internal policies, so that we are aligned to meet the demands of the Focus Act. Secondly, we're going to approve both new academic programs and campus master plans that will allow campuses to better serve students. And finally, we have an important discussion on the health of our new academic programs and the role of the commission in approving capital projects as they come forward. And I don't know if I've seen her in the room yet or not, but is the new chancellor of the Board of Regents here? Okay. All right.
En route.
Okay, very good. And that's my report. Mike, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I want to thank the members of the commission and for future Dr. Kadir, who will be a medical doctor in just a few months, for joining us on the phone. First, want to recognize some great work that we have actually just learned in the last few hours. Tom Morrison, where are you? You're actually going to need to stand up. As you all know, Tom Morrison leads our Veteran Education Division here at THEC. And this is the division that is the guardian of GI Bill benefits in Tennessee. And for any institution to be able to serve veterans, Tom's shop has to approve them. And we actually found out this morning, we are audited annually by the Federal United States Department of Veterans Affairs on our ability to carry out these duties, and Tom's shop received the highest rating a state approving agency can receive. So we are very grateful. Debbie, are you there? Anyone else from Veterans Division here? We thank you very much. Veterans, thank you. We talked last meeting and at our retreat this fall about the honed focus of the commission moving forward. something I just want to be able to bring to the commission's attention is that honed vision is kind of moving forward even now. The three things that we're committed to doing to support our core vision of being relentlessly focused on increasing the number of Tennesseans with a college degree here. We create and maintain a policy environment focused on the Drive to 55. We innovate to support student access and success, and we protect students and consumers. The THEC team has responded, I think, incredibly well to this. If something we're doing doesn't align with this, we're not doing it anymore. And if we're trying to think of new things to support these things, then we're going to start doing those things. I think one of the things we've seen the last few months is this agency is at its best when we're directly connected with students. And one of the things we're working through right now is making sure that the projects we have underway connect directly with the pipeline that will support increased attainment in Tennessee. To depict that, we've worked through a couple things, and that's taking a look at, of 100 high school seniors, what happens to them? And what are the ways that THEC can make sure that all of those seniors, or as many as possible, eventually become college graduates? So what we've tried to do is we've tried to look at the breaks in the pipeline and then think through the interventions we deploy as an agency to remedy the breaks. So of 100 high school seniors, 88 will go on to graduate from high school. And while we may be higher ed, we have a lot to do with that because we have so many K-12 partnerships at play here in the agency. So we have several strategies that align with increasing the number of high school graduates. Of the 88 that graduate from high school, 55 will ultimately go on to enroll in higher education, and 31 of those 55 are going to require remediation. And so again, you see the THEC strategies that align with addressing that part of the pipeline. We have 40 of those students now persisting from year 1 to year 2, and I think we all view those statistics as troubling. But we also think we have an array of initiatives that address that. I wouldn't want to be a state trying to address that pipeline if I was funding based on enrollment. So being an outcomes-based funding state, I think, has a direct effect on the persistence from year 1 to year 2. And then finally, 24 go on to earn a degree. There's an important statistical caveat here. More than 24 will go on to earn a degree eventually. But if you follow that cohort as a unit through their initial 4 years in higher education, this is where we're at. More importantly to the Commission, I would just say, as we continue to look at new innovations or we try to shore up existing innovations, we're viewing it through this prism and being connected to students. An important group of students who are not mentioned here are adult students. And obviously, we don't look at them as part of this continuum. There's an entirely different Reconnect continuum, and Jessica Gibson leads our work on that. One of the things we've done this last year that I'm most proud of, and Troy Grant and Dr. Sharika Nelms, if she's here, really have led the way on making sure that we're the first state in the nation to have a cadre of college counselors in schools. So we have 30 THEC employees who now work in a high school under the auspices of Advise Tennessee. And we thought about doing a full presentation. I just thought we'd show you the results of what is a 4-month-old program. And in 4 months, we've had an 11% year-over-year increase in FAFSA completion at Advise Tennessee schools. That represents thousands of students doing a FAFSA that didn't do it last year. I absolutely attribute that to the work that Dr. Nelms has been leading. And if we're going to be results-driven, these are the results we'd like to see. And so I'm very thankful to them for their work.
How have you decided which schools to put advisors in?
Well, first, you had to automatically be under the state's college going rate. So only the most needy schools were even allowed to apply. But then it was a competitive process. These advisors embedded in schools only work if schools support them, and if school superintendents and principals are committed to letting them do what they do. So you had to meet those first thresholds of being disadvantaged, and then you had to compete. Obviously, this is something we're going to be watching closely moving forward. I think that it gives us a chance as a state to accelerate even faster towards the Drive to 55. I think the second thing that we are all watching closely and that we're going to get a chance to talk about some today is the Focus Act transition. There is no doubt this is a seismic governance shift. It's one that I will give, again, our team has been incredibly vigilant about trying to look around a corner and see the challenges that the focus transition is going to present and address them now. We thought it would be helpful during the Executive Director's report to give you an update, and Dr. Lauren Collier, who leads the focus transition work here at THEC, is going to walk you through where we are right now on this governance shift.
Good morning. Chairman Cope, Mr. Kraus and members of the commission. As you know, the campus transition teams have been working since this summer to prepare to stand up new boards. They've been reviewing policies, assessing institutional capacity, preparing information to empower the decision-making of these new boards. With that, they've worked with THEC, they've worked with both TBR and UT system representatives, and also engaged the expertise of other states and national experts. Last week, the transition task force met, and we walked away from that, I think, feeling like we had a handle on the big things. Some of those things are still in process. You'll hear about that later today and moving forward. But we did feel like we had some confidence that certainly the institutions are prepared, and we're prepared to continue communicating and working through those efforts with them. So where we are now is some very intricate steps to move into standing up these boards. The Focus Act itself and the accreditor, so the Southern Association of Colleges and Schools Commission on Colleges, have a set of policies that really dictate how this process moves that you can see outlined on the screen. So beginning next week, we will start the confirmation process. And the governor's office has really crafted a confirmation process that is somewhat streamlined. Next Tuesday and Wednesday, the first three institutions, so East Tennessee State University, Middle Tennessee State University, and the University of Memphis, their board appointees will go before the Senate and the House Education Committees as cohesive boards. That agenda will include some informal time with the committee members on Tuesday morning for them to interact, and then the formal hearings. The House hearing will be on Tuesday afternoon, and the Senate hearing will be on Wednesday afternoon. The same process will be repeated the following week with Tennessee State University, Tennessee Tech University, and Austin Peay University. Those resolutions at each university will be presented as a whole with a single resolution. They do have to go through the General Assembly. Once that happens, the campuses will submit those board members' names to SAC-COC for confirmation. Now, the tricky part is SAC-COC meets March 14th through 16th, and once those are approved, then they require that the boards must convene within 30 days. The Focus Act requires that those boards be trained prior to meeting. So in order to meet that timing window, what we have worked out is that we are going to couple the initial training with the first called board meeting. In order to do that, what we've done is walk through what the training requirements are, both those that are outlined in the Focus Act and those that are part of SAC-COC requirements. And we have prioritized those elements that we think the boards need to make the most effective decisions right off the bat. So the initial training in March will include a team from THEC and in partnership with Dr. Carol Cartwright. She is a former university president and consultant with the Association of Governing Boards. She has already been working with all 6 of the institutions. So she knows the Focus Act, she knows the institutions. This little travel team will go prepare the new boards for first and foremost, their legal and ethical responsibilities, and then also some of the major decisions they have to make, namely setting tuition and budget processes. The other elements of training we will defer to the end of the summer when we will bring everybody together, both university representatives, system representatives, and all of the boards. So in terms of next steps, we have, as we originally had outlined, and then when we have invited the campuses to signal their intent, if they want to undertake a capital project management and procurement at the first date that is possible, which will be December 1st of this year, we've asked them to go ahead and give us some sort of notice so that we can begin those processes. We have also communicated the process for affirming their mission statement. At this point, that is what is already on file, both with SAC-COC and their existing governing bodies. And then that process can be reevaluated in subsequent years. Finally, there are ongoing sort of processes as we look into how to do capital outlay prioritization. You'll hear more about that today. And we are moving into some long-range data planning processes. So that's where things stand. And I just in closing want to say thank you to the presidents, to their transition teams. Everyone has been very open and communicative and cooperative, and I think that has helped us both identify issues and begin to work through them.
To the commission, I would just say the most important thing that I think our agency needs to do the next 6 months is fulfill our statutory role to train these boards. And then in August, we anticipate a joint called meeting, probably for the first time in history, of TBR, UT, THEC, and all of the locally governed boards. So we will commit to keep you up to date. In May, we'll be able to debrief you on each of the training sessions and how those went. But right now, we need to train these boards. I think we've been tried to communicate the most important message to the institutions, and the presidents have heard us say this ad nauseum, but let's not pour a 5-year transition into 12 months. Let's get these boards appointed, vote on a budget, get them trained. We'll have had a great year. And each of the presidents, I think, have gone above and beyond. Someone else who has gone above and beyond and certainly knows how to make an entrance on cue is Chancellor David Gregory. And I wanted to say a couple things and also let Chairman Cope welcome Chancellor Designee Tidings. This focus transition, I think we can all say very honestly, any transition like this has peril involved. I think we will look back and much of that peril was mitigated by David Gregory's leadership. I truly believe that. We at THEC, most of us have had a multi-decade relationship with you. It will absolutely not be the same without you here at this table or as you used to do, floating around in the back causing chaos. But we're so grateful, Chancellor. And I will just say, point of personal privilege, when I met Chancellor Gregory, I was an intern. He didn't have to be nice to me. You can tell a lot about someone's character by how they treat people that can't talk back. And Chancellor Gregory treated me then exactly as he does now. We want to give you a small gift from the THEC staff. Remind you of visits to the legislature you will no longer make, and signed by our staff.
Mike, thank you so much.
Thank you. Of the floor, Chancellor.
Is it my report or is it to just
No,
say?
sir.
Okay.
That's right.
First of all, I'm humbled, Mike, and thank you to the members of the commission for recognizing me in this way. There's not a lot left for me to say other than thank you. It has been a privilege to work around people of great caliber, of professionalism. There's a little portion in Scripture that talks about an ant in king's palaces. I sort of feel like that ant in king's palaces because I worked around people that I know are much brighter than myself, much more talented than myself, but have worked together to create what I think is a very strong system of public higher education. Gentleman sitting to my right, he and I have enjoyed a great relationship this past year. I would tell the members of the commission the relationship between the Board of Regents and UT has never been any stronger. The new chancellor sitting to my left, which I hope I'll get an opportunity to introduce in a few moments, is the right person at the right time to take on the new leadership of the Higher Education Commission. But more than anything, the people sitting around the walls and back in here are people that I have had the privilege to know and work with on an individual basis in many different ways, and the talent that is there is incredible. And it's interesting that when you get to this point in your life, you think less about what you did and you think a whole lot more about who you had the opportunity to do it with. And so I had the opportunity to work with some people who are just absolutely incredible at what they do. So thank you to the commission. I feel like I'm kind of droning on here a minute, but thank you for the moment of personal privilege, Mike, and for recognizing me in this way, and to everyone in the room as well.
Well, thank you, Mike, and Chancellor Gregory, you're actually next on the agenda.
Good. Well, then
Back
this
over to
does
you.
give me the opportunity to introduce your new leader, which is Dr. Flora Tidings, and it is my privilege to introduce Dr. Tidings to you. And many of you already know Dr. Tidings as being our president at Chattanooga State Community College since mid-2015. And she, as I said earlier, is exactly the right person to lead the system at the right time. The search committee had some very good candidates that they looked at, and Dr. Tidings emerged through that search process as the selected choice. I appreciate the governor taking his personal time and effort to engage in looking for the right person to lead our system. On December 27th, Dr. Tidings was unanimously approved by our board in a special called board meeting. She assumes her duties officially next Wednesday morning on February the 1st. For those of you who may not know Dr. Tidings as well, she worked in public education in Georgia for most of her career, starting as a classroom teacher and moved into higher education in 1996 as the Director of Curriculum and Staff Development at Macon Technical Institute. She was appointed Vice President for Academic Affairs at Central Georgia Technical College 2 years later and served there until her appointment as President of Athens Technical Community College in 2003, where she served until she moved to Chattanooga in 2015. She earned her Bachelor's of Science degree in Education at Georgia Southern University, her Master's of Education at Mercer University, and her Doctor of Education degree in Occupational Studies at the University of Georgia. We're getting through that one. Dr. Tidings is going to do a great job as Chancellor, and it has been my privilege to work with Dr. Tidings not only in her capacity as President, but just as we're transitioning through. And I'm very proud of who our regents have selected, and would just ask you to please join me in welcoming Dr. Flora Tidings. Mr. Chairman, I will be brief, and I do know some of the things that I prepared to say maybe you have covered already. Since I've met with you last, and with thanks to Dr. DiPietro, our senior team have been out to all 9 of the regional universities, both in the TBR system as well as in the University of Tennessee system, and those were fruitful visits for us. Speaking specifically to the 6 universities about the transfer process, and I understand that you may have talked about that already, but I would just tell you that the universities are prepared to take on their roles. Their planning is intense and thorough, and I think they're in good position to assume their own governance. Our conversations at Martin, Chattanooga, and Knoxville were somewhat different in talking more about future relationships, transfer pathways, development of new programs, sharing of information, and I appreciate, Joe, your willingness to entertain our group, and I think those briefings were beneficial to us. I don't know if I wanted to introduce just a couple of other people. I don't know if Dr. Lana Hamilton has made it here or not, or was here today or not, but we have a new president at Jackson State Community College, Dr. Lana Hamilton. She's actually one of ours. She was our academic vice president at Northeast State Community College, and she will do a tremendous job at Jackson State Community College. Our board will meet in a special called board meeting tomorrow afternoon at 3 o'clock, and we'll approve the criteria for the search for Dr. Tidings' replacement. So soon we will be on to the task of finding a new president at Chattanooga State Community College. And I just want to say a word. I don't know if Keith Carver's here or not, but I just want to say a word to Dr. Carver as he comes on as president, chancellor at UT Martin. A great choice, and will do wonderful things, I think, for that university. So, Mr. Chairman, that completes my report.
Thank you, Chancellor Gregory. Dr. DiPietro.
Sir, Mr. Chairman, and members of the Commission, begin with, I need to thank the gentleman to my left. He's been a great partner over the time frame. And the one thing about David that was better than John Morgan is he would say, he says he's brief, and he is brief. Every time Chancellor
That's
Morgan
good.
started
I can still
the,
text John if I need to.
yeah. Every time he started off by saying, I'll be brief, whether it be in front of this commission or over in the General Assembly, it was always a lot longer-winded than most of us wanted it to be. The other thing I would say that to Chancellor Tidings, we look forward to working with you. The reality is we look forward to working with the LGIs as well, because it's all about what's good for Tennessee, right? So the University of Tennessee is committed to a partnership just like we've had with TBR over the 6-year time frame. I've had the privilege to serve in this capacity, because it's not an us against them phenomena. It's a set of institutions that need to work together very closely to advance higher education in the state. We've completed a number of searches in the last year. In fact, I'm search weary, and Keith Carver's obviously one of them. He has started as chancellor out at UT Martin. He's doing a great job. Although I'll have to tell you one little story about Keith. About 2 weekends ago, I got this picture by text, and it was a plate of chicken gizzards. And he's on this thing he's calling Carver's Caravan. He's gotten out to high schools. He's gotten out to community colleges in the area, Jackson State and others, and some of their community centers. And somebody has spread the word that this guy loves gizzards, and I don't really think he does, but every time he gets out of his car now, they hand him a plate of gizzards. But he's doing a great job, and he started on the 3rd day of January. And if you know Keith as well as I do, he loves a good practical joke, so we got even. The Institute of Agriculture Chancellor is on board, Tim Cross. He's the former Dean of Extension there, and he started the 1st day of January. He's been here at UT since about 20 years, and he was in the Extension job since 2008. And the news at Knoxville, Beverly Davenport is accepted and has been named and approved by our board to be the next chancellor at the University of Tennessee, Knoxville. Beverly has been through progressively more responsible positions in higher education. Her last post was as interim president at the University of Cincinnati. She's been at Purdue University, Kansas State University. She was provost at Cincinnati, and she's had a number of associate provost posts. I think you'll really, really like her. Obviously, she's the first woman to be named chancellor at Knoxville, but I would remind you she's not the first woman to be a chancellor in our system, because Margaret Perry was named chancellor and was very successful at UT Martin prior to her. We've made a couple of hires on our system staff, too. One of them is our chief financial officer, David Miller, who's with me. David, stand up, please. David most recently served as vice president for administration and fiscal affairs at the University of Wisconsin system. And he brings extensive financial and higher education experience. We're going to get him around to talk to a number of people so we get him introduced appropriately. And I have a new executive assistant with Keith moving on to Martin, and that's David Golden, who's with us. David, please stand up. He was previously a faculty member. He served as a faculty representative on our board of trustees as well. So he's hit the ground running, and we cross-trained him with Keith for about a month, and it's been about as seamless as it can go.
But is he on Twitter the way Dr. Carver was? That's an important
not quite.
method of communication.
But we'll get it done. Our budget advisor group is going to be reconvening. You know, that's the group that took a look at the sustainability of our business model over the last 2 years. We set a set of parameters and allocated constraints on the allocated resource reductions. Either you need to drive revenue in the system and create revenue, or you have to do cost savings to make it all balance out. To each of the executive officers, the total was $68 million over our system over that 2 years. We think we'll exceed that $68 million. We're at $61 million now. The reality is we're going to reconvene our budget advisor group first part of next week. We're going to point toward another 2-year period of the same approach with tuition increases at the cost of inflation, fixed cost increases at around 3% or thereabouts, and modeling it out over the next couple of years to do it as well. Again, we think it's more important than ever. The legislature last year created a new board subcommittee. It's the Committee on Efficiency and Cost Savings. That committee will hear from the Budget Advisor Group, and we'll be meeting routinely with them through the springtime. We hope to go to our board with recommendations for the next 2 years of that effort. As you've heard me say over and over again, we own this problem from the standpoint of the sustainability of our business model, and we have to do it in a way that continues to make our educational programming affordable and keeping tuition increases as reasonable as possible. A couple other system updates. I'll be giving the second State of the University address on February 21st at 3 p.m. Central in the auditorium of the Nashville Library. The non-formula budget units this year, we're really trying to figure out how they're going to get by because their recommended budget increase, as we understand it, is insufficient for them to provide a salary increase like the rest of the state. They need an additional 2.5 million to be able to do that, to fund their salary pool at 3%. We're still struggling trying to figure out how to do that. I just wanted you to understand our concern about that. Now remember, these non-formula units are units that do not have a robust tuition model. They have modest numbers of students as opposed to large undergraduate populations. The non-formula units include the Institute of Agriculture, Institute of Public Service, and the Health Science Center in Memphis. And so those leaders are struggling trying to figure out how they're going to get by. And then I've added additional stress to them through this budget advisory group, so you can imagine there's considerable tension. At UTK, we're pleased that 4 professors were named Fulbright Scholars this year. Their disciplines include electrical engineering, German literature, foreign policy strategies, and biomechanics, and it's quite an honor. At Chattanooga, the School of Nursing became the first university in Tennessee to be invited to join the National Hartford Center of Gerontological Nursing Excellence. And at Martin, the Southern Association of Colleges and Schools Commissions on Colleges, has officially removed the University of Tennessee Martin from probationary status, and we're very happy about that. Actually, I said to Keith, you can't slow down. You know, I'm on the advisory board of SACS, and the 5-year mid-cycle review is coming up in a year, so he has to get right back with it, and he understands that. And UT Martin's online MBA program was ranked highest in Tennessee by U.S. News and World Report. And at the Health Science Center, the Center for Addiction Science was recognized as the first center of excellence in addiction medicine by the Addiction Medicine Foundation. So we're proud of all these accomplishments. The Institute of Public Service, this past year, it provided assistance that led to more than $1.2 billion in economic impact for Tennessee, and we're happy with that. Nobody does outreach in this state like our system does, and IPS is a really important part of it. And if you're interested in your son or daughter's activity on the soccer field and whether they're going to get injured or not, in the Institute of Agriculture, the Athletic Research and Performance Center is partnering with American Sports Centers to figure out how not only to keep professional and collegiate athletes from getting hurt, but our kids. Because it's really a set of teamwork with It's a team that actually includes turf grass people who can figure out what surfaces are best, as well as physiologists and biomechanic experts who can figure out how much stress is on a joint on this surface versus another one. So if your child sprains his ankle or her ankle on the soccer field, hopefully we can avoid that in the future. That concludes my report, Mr. Chairman. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Dr. DiPietro. Are there any questions of Dr. DiPietro or Chancellor Gregory? I forgot to open it up for questions if anyone has questions of either person. Okay, if not, we'll move on to the portion of our agenda that addresses action items requiring action of this commission. Item number 1, post-secondary education authorization. Dr. Bellard Chase.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, Mr. Kraus, members of the commission. Good morning. Just as a reminder, last agenda, we now have 2 tracks for authorization. We have the traditional authorization track where there's a lot more regulation involved, and they get temporary authorization for 2 years, and we approve all their programs. And then we have something called optional expedited authorization, and that was introduced last session through the Tennessee Higher Education Authorization Act. And that is for accredited degree granting institutions who are accredited by an accreditor recognized by the U.S. Department of Education. They're eligible for Title IV. They have a comprehensive complaint process, and they're operating lawfully in Tennessee. And that's more of a streamlined approach. It's not as regulatory. So with that being said, I have 2 action items for your consideration today. The first is for the traditional authorization in sections 1A and 1B. There are 8 institutions that the Committee on Post-Secondary Educational Institutions has recommended for temporary authorization and 33 new programs.
Are there any questions with respect to items 1A or 1B? And just so you're aware, we're going to consider both those items together in a single vote. So if there are any questions with respect to item 1A or 1B, let us know. If not, the chair will entertain a motion to approve and adopt those authorizations and approvals.
So moved.
Motion by Ms. Coben, the second by Mayor Wharton. Ms. Warsborn, please call the roll.
Chairman Cope.
Aye.
Mr. Kraus.
Aye.
Dr. Dishner.
Aye.
Secretary Hargett.
Aye.
Ms. Kadir. Ms. Kadir.
Aye.
Mr. Lee. Ms. Coben.
Aye.
Treasurer Lillard.
Aye.
Ms. Roach.
Aye.
Mayor Wharton.
Aye.
Comptroller Wilson. Mr. Wilson.
Aye.
Mr. Chair, we have 10 ayes.
Very good. The motion carries. Next, item 1C, optional expedited authorization.
Yes, sir. So there are 12 institutions listed in section 1C. The committee has also recommended that they be granted optional expedited authorization.
Any questions? If not, I will entertain a motion to approve the recommendation.
So moved.
A motion by Mr. Wilson. Is there a second?
Second.
Second from Treasurer Lillard. Ms. Warsborn, please call the roll.
Chairman Cope.
Aye.
Dr. Dishner.
Aye.
Secretary Hargett. Ms. Kadir.
Aye.
Mr. Lee. Ms. Coben.
Aye.
Treasurer Lillard.
Aye.
Ms. Roach.
Aye.
Mayor Wharton.
Aye.
Comptroller Wilson. Mr. Keith Wilson.
Aye.
Mr. Chairman, we have 9 ayes.
Very good. The motion carries. Thank you, Dr. Bellachase. Next, agenda item number 2, policy updates. Betty Dandridge Johnson.
Thank you, and good morning. I'd like to provide an update on all of the policies from the Academic Affairs Division. The passage of the Focus Act in April 2016 provided the momentum for a thorough evaluation of the academic policies by the THEC staff. The THEC academic policies were reviewed to ensure that the academic planning and approval process was aligned with the Focus Act in providing greater autonomy and innovation for the TBR universities while promoting student success at all colleges and universities. With these enhanced THEC responsibilities due to the Focus Act, the Academic Affairs Division was expanded to include a new staff position. Dr. Pam Knox joined THEC in July as the Associate Chief Academic Officer. Dr. Knox has been integral in the policy revision process with her previous experience at TBR in academic program development and planning. And in reviewing these policies, THEC staff incorporated best practices, and more importantly, we aligned policies with the SAC COC requirements related to teach-out plans when programs are terminated, as well as qualifications for external reviewers. All of these policies were drafted. They were shared with all of the chief academic officers, as well as both TBR and UT system staff for review and feedback. And the final versions of these policies up for your consideration today were also reviewed by our THEC legal counsel. So there are 4 policies.
Very good. Thank you, Betty.
But
Okay, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Thank you. The very first policy is the new academic program approval process. This policy outlines the 8 steps from campus interest in proposing a new academic program, followed by a detailed proposal process that involves external judgment and institutional governing board action, followed by commission action and monitoring of any new program. The results of these steps are what you will hear later today as outlined for the 3 new academic programs for commission action, as well as our annual monitoring report. In an effort for transparency, all letters of notification will be posted on the THEC website for a 15-day public comment period. THEC staff will be reviewing all these comments and evaluating this letter of notification based on the established criteria that's outlined. And of course, alignment with the state master plan and institutional mission is really core to any program proposal. If these criteria are satisfied, THEC would then issue an approval for the institution to develop the program proposal. And this process, and if the commission has not approved the academic program within 2 years, then this letter of notification is no longer valid. All of the criteria for the new academic program proposal remain the same in the current policy, except for the marketing and recruitment criterion that was added. This criterion, after doing a lot of research in terms of best practices, in terms of reviewing other state and institutional policies, we believe that inclusion of this criterion will have a positive impact on assisting institutions in meeting their enrollment goals, especially during the monitoring period. The next academic policy that was reviewed was the academic program modification. This one was initially approved by the Commission in January of 2015. The purpose of this policy allows established concentrations with steady enrollments and graduations to be elevated to freestanding programs. Also, new degree designations can be added to existing programs under this policy as well. These modifications have proven to be very helpful in responding to workforce demands with clarity around the name of the academic program. And as an example, at the University of Memphis, the advertising and public relations concentrations were elevated as freestanding programs from their journalism program. Last year, there were 15 program modifications that were approved by the executive director. And the major revision to this policy was that we developed a checklist to really guide the institution with the overall campus approval process. The next policy that was reviewed was Academic Policy A13, which is the new academic units. And THEC has statutory responsibility to also review and approve new academic units. And the proposed revision to the new academic units policy really was around defining what those typical academic units were. And we really focus on only providing those units that award academic credits. So those would be colleges, schools, divisions, and departments. And so campuses that are proposing new academic units would have to still submit a proposal and would have to address criteria such as rationale, provide an inventory of any academic program offerings, as well as a current organizational chart and a cost-benefit analysis. And last year, we approved, the executive director approved 2 new academic units, and both were honor colleges at both Tennessee State University and Tennessee Tech University. So it doesn't occur very often. The next policy is the Academic Actions Notification Policy, and this is a new policy, and it's really a direct response to the very good work that the Tennessee Board of Regents has been doing with their 30-day academic actions. And THEC staff drafted this policy in an effort to maintain the accuracy of the state's academic program inventory. And the THEC's API, as it's known, is a comprehensive listing of all active and inactive certificate and degree programs that are offered across the state. And so to prepare for implementation of this policy, all the colleges and universities reviewed their inventory for accuracy regarding the zip code, I'm going into the weeds here, program name, degree designation, and concentration offerings. The TBR community colleges will continue to submit their monthly summary report based on board-approved actions, but the universities will notify. It won't be that THEC will be approving these academic actions that are listed here. They will just be notifying THEC 3 times a year of all of the academic actions that will be approved through their campus process. And some of these academic actions will include any new certificate and concentrations, any name changes to existing programs or concentrations, any inactivation, reactivation, or termination. And the Focus Act also calls for institutions to submit to the General Assembly all of the programs that have been terminated. So overall, these 4 academic policies will facilitate THEC's statutory responsibility to review and approve new and modified academic programs, as well as new academic units. And lastly, the academic actions notification policy will maintain the accuracy of the state's academic program inventory. THEC staff recommends approval of these 4 policies. Any questions?
Betty, any questions of Betty? Mike, did you have a comment you wanted to?
Just to say to the commission, we're going to be going through this a lot the next 6 months as we try to bring all of our policies up to date, but also make sure they're aligned with the Focus Act. I think what we know is ahead is there are decision points, and anytime we ask you as the commission to make a decision, we want to have it backed up with a previously adopted policy. So I'm very appreciative. Betty kind of was the first one out of the gate on all of our divisions to sit down with her policies and go line by line. Also, Scott and Brett from our legal office who provided, I think, really great counsel. So this puts us, we think, in a great posture to move forward under Focus and do recommend approval.
Thanks. Any questions of Mike or Betty? If not, I will entertain a motion to adopt the recommendation as presented. I have a motion from Secretary Hargett,
Second.
second from Dr. Dishner. Ms. Osborne, please call the roll.
Chairman Coe.
Aye.
Dr. Dishner.
Aye.
Secretary Hargett. Ms. Kadir.
Aye.
Mr. Lee. Ms. Coben.
Aye.
Treasurer Lillard.
Aye.
Ms. Roach.
Aye.
Mayor Wharton. Comptroller Wilson. Mr. Keith Wilson.
Aye.
Mr. Chairman, we have 9 ayes.
Very good. The motion carries. Thanks, Betty. All right, next I'll call on Brett Gibson to talk to us about personally identifiable information and a change in policy for THEC in terms of handling that information. Brett.
Thank you, Chairman. Good morning, members. I have 2 policies for you to consider today. The first one is a new commission policy on the protection of personally identifiable information, or PII. When Mr. Krause came in August of 2016, one of the main priorities of THEC, student data, was on the top of his list. He asked that we develop a task force to review our internal policies on how we handle student data. Make sure that we're not, that it's secure, that we're not giving it out when we shouldn't, that we're not, that file rooms are secure, just everything that might encompass. General Counsel Scott Sloan led this task force for us. It was composed of representatives from all divisions of THEC and TSAC. We reviewed internal policies. The good news is we found that, as you might expect, we were doing things right. It's been a high standard here. It's something that we've all recognized, I believe, for a long time is important. We did believe, though, that a formal written policy would be helpful to maintain heightened awareness among the staff. And what you have in your materials is the result of that work. Key features of this policy: each division will maintain a log of any external disclosure of PII. Seems like a small thing, but it's a daily method that we use to maintain that heightened awareness of what we're doing with this data, where it is, where it goes. There's also a PII coordinator now that will be designated to work with our information systems director, Ms. King, and to audit access and conduct ongoing training on a yearly basis. Again, just to keep that heightened awareness among the staff. And then the policy itself and the procedures will be reviewed annually as well, just to make sure that we're doing everything we're supposed to be doing. We recommend approval.
Thanks, Brett. Mike, did you have anything you wanted to add?
I would just say this could be the most important thing we do as a commission is to protect Tennesseans' information when they've entrusted us with it. The next step will be training every single member of the commission staff, including myself. We'll all go through mandatory training, and we have a chain of custody now so that we are able to audit any transaction involving PII. I'm grateful to those. Virtually the entire agency was involved in this and do recommend approval.
Very good. Any questions? Move approval. Yes, sir. Secretary Hargett, is there a second?
Second.
Second, Treasurer Lillard. Ms. Osborne, please call the roll.
Chairman Coe.
Aye.
Dr. Dishner.
Aye.
Secretary Hargett. Ms. Kadir.
Aye.
Mr. Lee. Ms. Coben.
Aye.
Treasurer Lillard. Ms. Roach. Mayor Wharton. Comptroller Wilson. Mr. Keith Wilson.
Aye.
Mr. Chairman, we have 9 ayes.
Thanks. The motion carries. Next, Mr. Gibson, outside employment policy.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, this is a revised policy that was considered this past fall as well. The main purpose of this revision is just to update old language. The last time we looked at this policy or revised this policy was 2006, and we saw a need to make our policy consistent with that of other state agencies and state government. The main feature or the main purpose of this policy is to make sure that our staff, any outside employment our staff might engage in, does not conflict with the main duties that they have here at THEC or that THEC has in general, you know, the three missions we have. It seems like a simple thing, but there can be little details that that might need to be examined from time to time. So the key features of this policy is there's a list of factors to consider when determining whether any outside employment is appropriate. Staff is required to disclose outside employment involving higher ed, consulting, or policy-making positions they might have or they might be considering. And then staff is required to get approval from the executive director for any outside employment with other state agencies or any employment that could conflict with their regular working schedule. The overarching theme here is that a full-time position at THEC is intended to be the staff member's primary employment. And this revision just clarifies that and emphasizes that. We recommend approval.
Thanks, Brad. I have a motion from Secretary Hargett. Is there a second?
Second.
Second from Mr. Wilson. Ms. Osborne, please call the roll.
Chairman Cope.
Aye.
Dr. Dishner.
Aye.
Secretary Hargett. Ms. Kadir.
Aye.
Mr. Lee. Ms. Coben.
Aye.
Treasurer Lillard.
Aye.
Ms. Roach.
Aye.
Mayor Wharton. Comptroller Wilson. Mr. Keith Wilson.
Aye.
Mr. Chairman, we have 9 ayes.
Very good. The motion carries. Next, item 3 on the agenda is new academic programs. Dr. Pam Knox.
Good morning. We're bringing 3 programs forth today, and I'd like to start by thanking the Tennessee Board of Regents for their involvement in moving these programs forward. The first program we're going to talk about, and each of these 3 are very unique programs. The first one, it will be the first doctoral program that will be jointly badged by 2 institutions in the state. That means basically there will be 1 degree awarded to any graduate of the program, and that will bear both the names and the seals of both universities. I want to also thank President Nolan and President Oldham for your support in the establishment of these. We thought it would be good to bring folks from the campus that have been involved in the 5-year process of this development to explain how this all evolved. Dr. Celia McIntosh, who is the graduate dean at ETSU, and Dr. Mark Stevens, Dean and Senior Associate Provost from TEC, will be presenting that information. I'll turn that over to you.
I'll let you out first.
Thank you.
Thank you. We're very excited to be here. It's been quite a road and some intense planning, and we're just very happy to be here today. I wanted to present an abbreviated timeline. If it was unabbreviated, it would have been many pages, and you don't need to see that. So this goes back to the summer of 2012 when TBR Chancellor Morgan encouraged future doctoral programs to consider joint delivery. And in late 2012, our presidents brainstormed possibilities, and one of the things that's important as a faculty member developing curriculum is you want support of everybody up the line. And so very early in 2013, the ETSU and TTU nursing faculty, deans, and others began discussion on a joint DMP with 6 focus areas. There were several meetings that happened via technology, several in-person meetings in Sevierville, which is kind of sort of halfway in between, and many, many emails. And so I condensed all that into that one bullet. In January of 2015, THEC approved the letter of intent. We had this formal site visit. The Tennessee Board of Nursing approved it just November. TBR approved it December, and here we are today. So when you're developing a program, you first look at faculty expertise, and then you start looking at the curriculum. And there's a lot of excitement for this. The curriculum gets guided a lot by the nursing accrediting body standards, but then you also, faculty and their expertise have opportunity to do that. The faculty expertise between the two universities are adult gerontological acute care practitioner, executive leadership and nursing, family nurse practitioner, pediatric nurse practitioner and primary practice, psychiatric mental health practitioner, and women's health care nurse practitioner. There were a lot of discussions on method of delivery. We went with a blended model, which helps working professionals be able to access education with the on-site intensives. We talked about how we would recruit. We talked about admissions, advising, progression, graduation, record holding, how curriculum revisions would be dealt with in the future, the degree award, and the joint badging, as Dr. Knox referenced, and then also governance and oversight of the joint program with representation for both universities, when they would meet, how often they would meet, and that got into administrative council, curriculum council, the graduate program coordinators, and the advisory councils. So this program fits very well with our institutional missions. Both universities are really committed to serving people of their region, both with educational attainment and serving needs such as clinical services. The joint DNP program philosophy embraced that, and it's, I will quote here, to facilitate the health of the community, state, and region through excellence and innovation in nursing education, research, service, scholarship, and practice. This program also fits very well with the strategic plans of the university to do the joint program in cooperation. ETSU has long been committed to offering distance education to increase accessibility, and also very much promotes a culture of stewardship for wise use of resources. And the TTU plan has one of their prominent action items is to offer new graduate degree programs in high demand and distinctive areas. And now we're going to tag team, and I'll turn it over to Mark. I'll leave that there in case you want.
Thank you, and good morning. This is a joint program, as we said. It's one degree offered by both universities. It allows us to make a more efficient use of our faculty expertise, to blend them into, in effect, one faculty. It greatly expands the regional reach of our programs. Both areas are in need of this type of program. It allows us to address a problem that is inherent in graduate, especially doctoral programs of small classes. This allows us to pool our students as well as our faculty. And it builds on a collegial relationship between our two universities and will provide graduates to serve both regions specifically, but also across the state and beyond. From the student point of view, it is a blended format, so it's very accessible to working professionals as well as students who are going full-time. We will be having what are called intensives that will provide doctoral experience in respect to various types of research, the capstone, and networking. These will be multiple day events such as in the Sevierville area. It also provides us with an opportunity for transition into doctoral preparation as a nurse practitioner and administrator and educator. It fits very well with the workforce needs of Tennessee as well. The master plan for higher education and CCTA We need qualified faculty for instruction in all levels of nursing, from RN to BSN to MSN, and it is also one of the top areas of need in terms of workforce growth throughout the next 10-year period through 2024. It addresses a particular need in rural Tennessee, of which both of our institutions serve rural areas, in the sense that more and more Tennesseans require health care, and we have a serious shortage. For example, there are many counties, few are listed here, where there are either no physicians or only one physician available, very limited access to primary care, and this type of program will allow professionals to be more available in those areas. In summary, this is a joint program. We believe that it definitely serves both the educational and the workforce needs of Tennessee, and it will increase the availability of healthcare professionals across the state, but especially in those underserved areas. It also will, as I said earlier, allow for a more efficient use of our faculty and institutional resources and provide better educational services to the residents of Tennessee. It clearly fits within the mission of both institutions, and we believe that it will support the Governor's Drive to 55 initiative.
Very much. Okay, I'd like to recognize Dr. Brian Nolan and Dr. Phil Oldham. Two of you may want to speak on this program, I'm told.
Go close past the sale.
Mr. Chair, members of the Commission, first, thank you for your consideration of this program proposal. This follows on the heels of partnership.
Let me just try and thank you for the experience. And let me just add to what President Nolan indicated, and really thank faculty and staff at both institutions. When you look at it summarized like this, it seems like a no-brainer and an obvious thing to do. These things are not easy to put together. A lot of effort. Both institutions. Benefit of our.
Thanks very much. Mr. Wilson.
Question. First of all, congratulations, but it seems to me when I've worked on much smaller scale on things like cooperation between two systems that it oftentimes falls apart about revenue and cost sharing. And I'm just curious how you all work that out. That seems like a really tough part of that equation.
Well, I think we both have scars. But again, that's a lot of the nuts and bolts that really had to be sorted out. And I think in the end, the driving force on both sides was to do the best thing for students in Tennessee. And I think as long as we kept that in mind, we got through all those obstacles.
I would concur with President Oldham's comments. The costs are shared across institutions. Both of us will be adding 3 new faculty members over the course of the life cycle of the program to meet the demand. Recognize that the cost here is revenues will balance out.
So the cost is the same whether it's one institution or whatever. I mean, there's no incremental cost difference for a student pursuing a dual. Is that correct?
From a student perspective, costs are equivalent across both institutions.
Right.
From our perspective, there is a savings because we're not having to bring to bear the full portfolio of specialists. We're able to benefit from the existing specialty care, particularly in pediatrics and gerontology at Tennessee Tech.
Well, congratulations. Tough thing to do.
Very good. Any other questions?
I actually have.
Yes, ma'am.
On that subject, how does the funding formula work with joint programs? Russ?
Back over here. Well, it presented a unique circumstance for the formula, and what we said early on, committed to both schools, is that we would basically count both degrees in both institutions' outcomes to encourage those partnerships and that collaborative degree. Seemed like the right thing to do, and again, it was a unique situation, but that's how we'll proceed in the future.
Okay, and I have one other question. The underserved counties in the state of Tennessee, are you all doing particularly targeted marketing there, trying to get perhaps people who are currently nurses in those counties to come into this program so that they might return there and bring these talents back where we need them the most?
I can. Once it's approved and we're allowed to market, we will be marketing. We have a recruiter in place to travel and go to those areas.
Other questions? Nancy, did you have one or?
I just want to again commend the spirit of partnership, because as we consider in a little while low producing programs, it occurs to me that this is exactly the model that the state should be moving toward, in the shared resources and that commitment to serve students more broadly across the state. So thank you for that vision. But I did want to ask a question about student services piece of it. We've talked about the additional faculty, but I'm sure there had to be some consideration to advising, the clinical practice, and so forth. And so how did that piece of student services develop in the conversation?
Thank you. That was one of the big things discussed. There are student services available on both campuses already, and all of those will be available to these students across the board. So I know ours better, so if that's okay, I'll mention ours. So we have an online graduate student liaison that all of these students can contact. We have graduate student success specialist program that helps students with sometimes managing life events, and they are also will be able to access this. We both have technology assistance, and these students can contact whichever campus they feel like, and they will get help. These students will be fully considered students at both universities with those student services, and we both already serve distant students, and so they will just mesh seamlessly, hopefully, into that. They'll actually have 2 numbers to call or 2 emails instead of 1, so that might be an advantage to them.
Other questions?
I would just say, not to be the person that links everything to the Focus Act, but the reality is right now it's central. I hope we all find this reassuring. One of the concerns when Focus was proposed were, well, universities won't work together anymore, and I think this is an illustration that that's not the case. In fact, they may delve deeper into things like this in order to seek efficiency. So find it greatly reassuring.
Mr. Chair, I move approval.
Very good. Dr. Dishner moves approval. Do we have a second?
Second.
Have a second. Comptroller Wilson. Ms. Worsborn, please call the roll.
Chairman Cope.
Aye.
Dr. Dishner.
Aye.
Secretary Hargett.
Aye.
Ms. Kadir.
Aye.
Mr. Lee. Ms. Coben. Treasurer Lillard.
Aye.
Ms. Roach.
Aye.
Mayor Wharton.
Aye.
Comptroller Wilson. Mr. Keith Wilson. Mr. Chairman, we have 10 ayes.
Very good. The motion carries. Next, item 3B on the agenda is MTSU's Bachelor of Science in Dance.
Okay. Prior to moving to this second program, I'd like to also mention that Mr. Kraus has authorized us to commission a study of the DNP in light of the economic issues that we have, the need for additional nursing programs, but we wanted to make sure we're getting the right ones, the right concentrations, focuses, things like that. So the THEC commissioned a market and feasibility study with external consulting firm Tripp Umbaugh of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and they have been working for 3 months now, I believe, to explore the questions related to what do we need in terms of other DNPs. There are 11 DNP programs in the state, 4 of which are public, 5 of which are now public, or publicly involving universities. We will be holding a statewide nursing leadership meeting on March 7th to present their results.
So just to expand on that, that's a little bit of a new paradigm for us. Typically, we respond to degree programs that come in accordingly. We're trying to find out what we actually need and then respond. These are expensive programs. Any doctoral program is expensive. So we've asked an external consultant to tell us what the landscape looks like, which we then will communicate transparently to both systems. So thank you, Dr. Knox.
The Middle Tennessee State University is bringing forth 2 degrees. The first one that I'll talk about is the Bachelor of Science in Dance. MTSU has a knack for looking at their existing interdisciplinary talent and resources to fill a market gap and making the initial investments prior to submitting programs for approval to either the Board of Regents or the Higher Education Commission. With a focus on workforce development, over the last 5 years or so, we've tended not to focus much on the development of liberal arts or arts programs within the state, but we've rather focused on jobs and specifically on STEM programs. According to the Tennessee Department of Workforce Development, jobs in Tennessee are growing. The Department of Labor predicts 4,500 new, not replacement jobs, but new jobs in dance between 2014 and 2024. We're also losing dance minors to other states. Students in 2015 through 2016 alone, 10 students requested to go study dance through the academic common market elsewhere. MTSU is proposing to stem the tide by participating in the academic common market upon approval. I want to give you a little bit of history about dance at MTSU. There has been an 18 semester hour dance minor at MTSU since 1999. There are currently 60 students enrolled in that. They also have a dance emphasis, which is only 12 hours through the Bachelor of Science in Integrated Studies. The program that they are proposing is an interdisciplinary comprehensive program that will be based on a scholar-artist model and has had input from a statewide advisory board on the development of this. Costs associated with offering this program will be covered through tuition dollars completely. Prior to submission of this program, the facilities were renovated to meet the standards of the National Association of the School of Dance, whom they will seek accreditation from in the spring of 2020. The curriculum is 52 dance-specific semester credit hours, which are structured to meet those accreditation guidelines, which require 30 to 45% of the coursework in dance or dance-related courses. MTSU will offer 43% of the designated required courses. They will focus on theory, composition, technique, and build a knowledge base in the history, nutrition, body therapies, environmental effects of the human body, and the emerging dance medicine field. That will allow them to prepare for entry into the workplace in a number of performance-based as well as dance therapy, research, scholarship, administration, and of course graduate school. In the area of duplication, because I think it's important to address that directly, there is a Bachelor of Arts in Theater and Dance, which offers a 25 semester credit hour concentration at Austin Peay. They meet only 20% of the NASD course requirement standards. They also use a different SIP code, so they're not really creating the same student body or tapping the same students. APSU will be seeking accreditation through NASD as well as the National Association for Teachers of Dance. They do, in terms of admission, they are going to require a brief placement audition for technique courses only. Their enrollment prediction is that by the 3rd year, due to anticipated transfers, they will be having graduates by that point. They support the articulation and transfer policies for the state through the Associate of Arts, Associate of Science from Tennessee Community Colleges. And there's one faculty member 3rd year that they will add if pending in the growth of the enrollment. Otherwise, it's totally, and that will even be funded through tuition. They will be, of course, reviewed for the next 5 years upon approval, product implementation. And we did an external review in September with Dr. Ivan Polinkala from the Kennesaw State University Department of Dance. He's professor and department chair. And he stated that MTSU is well positioned and equipped to successfully launch and establish dance as a major field of study. I was impressed by the support of this program has garnered within the faculty and administration, and look forward to watching the discipline of dance thrive at MTSU. The THEC staff recommends approval. Dr. Burns is the provost at MTSU. Would you like to make some comments about this before we go forward?
Thank you, Pam, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Kraus. I can't really add much to what Pam has said. She did a great job outlining this proposed degree. This is something we've been working toward for, 7 or 8 years. It's been a long road to get here. We've got a small but dedicated faculty ready to teach dance, and a really enthusiastic student body who are currently minors or majors in the integrated studies program, who are eager to get an official dance major. So we appreciate your consideration.
Dr. Burns or Dr. Knox, a question for me, and I'm going to expose my ignorance on this, but are there jobs on the other side of a program like this where these students would be able to have employment if they majored in this or got a degree in this? And if so, what does that even look like?
Right, that was been part of our process of getting here. There are jobs. There are professional dance companies, there are choreographers, there are private dance instructors. That's all over the country. So, and then there are jobs less directly related to the major, but in sort of in the entertainment field. So yeah, even the minors that we have produced and the majors in the other degree, many of them are now working in fields directly related to what they've studied.
Very good.
They also create faculty positions and research nationally.
What institutions are the closest competitors offering this type of degree? And particularly, I'm interested in where do we have common market?
In Tennessee, there are only 2 programs that are in dance currently as approved programs. The Austin P one, which is in theater and dance. It has a concentration in dance, but it's not in dance specifically. Belmont has a program in dance, the undergraduate level. In terms of common market, Kennesaw, University of Alabama are the 2 big ones.
They all got out.
So remind me how that works with common market at that point. What would be our consideration if, in fact, we were to approve this program for Tennessee? Would we remain common market?
Yeah, do you want to say anything out there since you're in charge of common market back there?
Alabama will be removed, though.
Other questions? Thanks, Dr. Burns, for being here. I'm sorry, Mr. Wilson.
Yeah, you'll be seeking NASD accreditation?
Yes.
Okay, I just want to be sure that's done. You've got to, yeah.
If there are no other questions, the chair will entertain a motion.
Move to approve the program.
Mr. Wilson, we have a motion to approve. Is there a second?
Second.
Second from Comptroller Wilson. Ms. Orsborn, please call the roll.
Chairman Cope.
Aye.
Dr. Dishner.
Aye.
Secretary Hargett.
Aye.
Ms. Kadir.
Aye.
Mr. Lee. Ms. Coben.
Aye.
Treasurer Lillard.
Aye.
Ms. Roach.
Aye.
Mayor Wharton. Comptroller Wilson. Mr. Keith Wilson.
Aye.
Mr. Chairman, we have 10 ayes.
Very good. Motion carries. All right, next, another program from MTSU, Fermentation Science.
This is the first degree that we're aware of that actually has required changing the law in order to offer it. Currently, there are 43 of the 95 Tennessee counties that host 72 wineries employing 500 workers. There are more than 30 distilleries, 52 breweries, 10 cheese-making operations, and the largest yogurt manufacturing plant in the world, in addition to several other small producers and, of course, fermented food that we see at our local markets. The proposed interdisciplinary Bachelor's of Science will start in 2017, and it's designed to be one of a handful of schools nationally that will prepare students for working in the commercial food production and brewing industry. The curriculum is interdisciplinary, heavily grounded in biology, chemistry, agri-science, and includes an extensive business foundation to provide students the opportunity to understand how businesses actually operate. There are 13 faculty currently employed at MTSU from the College of Basic and Applied Sciences who will teach in the program. They plan to hire 2 new faculty, one in the first year to assist with curriculum development, and the second year to conduct research and teach as the curriculum expands in partnership with local industry. They will engage in internships with industries. This program supports 18 Tennessee transfer pathways, and also MTSU has articulation agreements in place with Motlow State, Volunteer State, and Columbia State to allow students within the Associate of Applied Science degrees to move forward without penalty to the junior and senior level courses. The only change in admission standards is that in order to enroll in fermentation classes where there's tasting of alcohol involved, they will have to, and that's tasting, not swallowing or consuming, the students have to have completed 60 hours of credit. That should get them closer to the 21 year-olds. Enrollment projections are based on industry and national projections. They anticipate their first graduate in year 3. The library is adequate. However, advanced classes will be relying heavily on manufacturer literature for specification and performance data. They will be hiring a technician in the 4th year to help maintain equipment. They have instructional facilities are adequate. They've got floor space for the fermentation labs, but they are having to install floor drains and certain other modifications to make them acceptable for food production. Not for the brewing per se, but for actual food, kimchi, sauerkraut, what else? Cheese, yogurt, things like that. And they will be in years 1 and 2 having some one-time expenditures for specialized instruction equipment related to food production. It will be funded through tuition revenues generated by the program. No institutional reallocation will take place. There's no accrediting body for fermentation science. So as part of their quality enhancement program, they will be establishing benchmarks, which will serve for the basis for the annual THEC evaluation, which will go on for 5 years. Corey Emil, who is the program coordinator, Dr. Emil up at East Michigan University, stated, "The university itself seems to have a knack for offering and supporting unique programs that prove to be successful at attracting students. Fermentation science is an emerging discipline, and by offering a program at its evolution, MTSU has the opportunity to become one of the leaders in the field." That external review occurred in September of last year. TX staff recommends approval of the program.
Thanks, Dr. Knopf. Dr. Burns?
Thank you, Pam. By its very nature, this is a program that's generated a lot of discussion and not a small number of jokes, and we understand that. And let me assure you, though, this is a serious academic degree. Any student who signs up for this thinking, wow, I'm going to get to taste wine and beer, is very quickly going to run into a lot of heavy-duty science and math courses. So this is not a party degree. This is a legitimate scientific degree, really, and one that has significant industry support. I mean, Pam mentioned that, all the brewers and distillers in this area, but also General Mills in Murfreesboro, which I think is the sole producer now of Yoplait yogurt. So there's a lot of interest, and we're already working on developing partnerships with industry and for internships and later employment.
But, Provost, what disciplines are the faculty coming out of? I'm sorry.
Agribusiness, agri-science, biology, chemistry.
You have a food science department?
We have not a standalone department, no.
A lot of this kind of activity happens in a Department of Food Science.
Right. Well, and Pam, I don't know if you gave a number, and we're not sure what the ultimate number of departments will be, but it's across campus. Food science, the biology, chemistry, agribusiness.
Other questions?
I just hope we will make sure we don't compromise the academic integrity of the program by allowing people to think that their life experience allows them to test out of classes.
That's a great point, Secretary Harden. If there are no other questions, I will entertain a motion to approve this program.
So moved.
Dr. Dishner moves approval. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second from Ms. Coben. Ms. Osborne, please call the roll.
Chairman Coe.
Aye.
Dr. Dishner.
Aye.
Secretary Hargett.
Aye.
Ms. Kadir.
Aye.
Mr. Lee. Ms. Coben.
Aye.
Treasurer Lillard.
Aye.
Ms. Roach.
Aye.
Mayor Wharton.
Aye.
Comptroller Wilson. Mr. Keith Wilson.
Aye.
Mr. Chairman, we have 10 ayes.
Very good. The motion carries. Okay, it is 11:30, and unless there's an objection from anyone, what I propose we do is take a 15-minute break, grab your lunches that are in the break room, and bring them back, I'd say 11:45 or 11:50, and we'll just continue to work through if that's okay with everybody. Okay.
That's a winner.
Very good. We'll recess. Review, and I will call on Victoria Harpole, please, ma'am, for that part of the agenda.
Because Tristan's going to be there.
Good morning, and thank you, Chairman Cope and Executive Director Kraus. The academic program review is really a collaboration among the academic affairs staff of Betty Dantrich Johnson, Herbert Brown, and I, and it includes two parts. The academic program activity report, which includes all of the 2016 program actions, so new, modified, and terminated programs. That comes out to about 100 program actions over 2016. And it also includes post-approval monitoring, which looks at how academic programs approved in previous years are meeting the enrollment and graduation benchmarks that they've set for themselves. So this is just a quick look at the program approval and monitoring cycle. It begins with program approval. All new and modified university programs come through THEC. New programs come to the commission, and modified programs come before the executive director. And through Complete College Tennessee Act, TBR actually approves the certificate and associate programs. The next piece is the post-approval monitoring. All programs, both the university and the community colleges, are monitored through THEC. Programs that don't meet benchmarks must complete program productivity plans, which will detail circumstances around why the program has maybe not met benchmarks and provides a plan of action to meet those benchmarks in the future. Programs that exit post-approval monitoring enter into the Quality Assurance Funding Program, which looks at everything from their accreditation to bringing in outside reviewers to take a look at the curriculum and the health of the program. In addition, every 3 years, THEC completes the program productivity report that, again, looks at those graduation and enrollment benchmarks. So there's never a time from when a program, enters into the program approval process through basically ever, where THEC is not monitoring what's going on in that program. We have a stake in the health of the programs that all of our students are in, and so there's never a time in which a program is just kind of set loose and told, go forth and prosper. There's always some accountability there. So in 2016, like I said, there were about 100 program actions that occurred. The majority of new programs and terminations actually occurred at the TBR community colleges. The areas at the community colleges that saw the most growth were trades and industry, health professions, and computer information sciences.
Tristan, would you mind walking us through, or maybe Chancellor Gregory, that's a real spike in terminations at the community colleges. What drove that?
So those terminations are really about an alignment in AAS degrees. So what we've been doing really over the last, I guess it's really been over the last 3 years, we've taken a sort of a really proactive approach to all of this. So on the one hand, when it comes to low-producing programs and programs that are part of this post-approval monitoring, we have been meeting with all of the university programs and with the community college programs who fall into those not meeting of benchmarks, and then asking them to create some kind of an ongoing plan to try to remediate that. Sometimes, of course, it takes more than a year or two to actually implement all of that plan or to really see the fruits of that. But it is the case that we, especially with the universities, have really been taking a sort of a proactive role with that. And then along with that has been really an alignment across the institutions. So in the AAS degrees, for the longest time, you can imagine we might have a CIT program at 10 of the community colleges, but the way that that's grown up is that those programs have all really been developed and grown up independently of one another. What we've been doing, and it's Dr. Berriman over at TBR who's really been carrying the most of the weight of this, has been working with teams of faculty, actually in many ways sort of akin to the creation of the transfer pathways, getting all of those faculty together and then getting an alignment of those associate's degrees. What's happened along the lines of that is that we've realized is, let's say, one school had, I don't know, they called it this, another school called it that, another school called it this, but it had a concentration. And so to clean all of that up has meant that we've actually closed some, we've actually terminated some programs, but really that termination has been a relabeling or a renaming or a reclassifying. It really isn't a sort of whole-scale losing capability. It is the case along along those lines in the universities that as we've met with programs that were low producing, there have been some programs that we've taken out, programs that are largely anachronisms. I think if I remember correctly, MTSU had a business machines program that was largely around sort of. Well, it was an anachronism. It was a program that made sense 20 years ago, but now really is part of a whole other discipline. So that's what's going on.
The new program activity, as we just heard from Dr. Dinley, there's some reasons for the flux that we've seen here. On the whole, over the last 5 years, the number of new programs each year has declined, with the exception of 2015. Though we have seen a rise in the number of programs that have come before the commission, with the exception, of 2015. But in 2016 was a fewer programs before the commission, but we just earlier today approved 3 programs in front of the commission, so we're on course in 2017 to have more programs have come before the commission.
Just as a reminder to the commission members who weren't here, in 2012, we delegated 12 or 11 community college. 2010, THEC actually delegated its community college program approval directly to the Board of Regents. In theory, the commission could still intervene. We've stayed back since that time.
The academic program modification policy was approved by the commission in 2015, which allows the executive director to approve program modifications. We're slightly up in 2016 with 15 program modifications. We had 8 in 2015. The most common occurrence is when you elevate a concentration up into a freestanding degree. These programs will go directly into quality assurance funding because the only way they're entertained to get the executive director's approval for a modification is if they're already meeting graduation and enrollment benchmarks. So these won't go into post-approval monitoring. They'll go straight into the continuous accountability portion.
Dr. Dinley?
Yeah, I just wanted to very much thank the commission for this kind of action. This is part of work that we've been trying to do to make sure that when our students graduate, that the qualification that they have actually makes sense to their employer. We don't want to be in a situation where somebody gives their resume in and then somehow you have to have some inside information to know what that degree is. And so exactly these kinds of these kinds of reclassifications where you can see at the University of Memphis maybe probably that degree in journalism, once upon a time that degree in advertising might well have been a concentration. But a bachelor's degree in advertising and a bachelor's degree in journalism, they don't sound the same. Does that make any sense? And so this has really been an approach to try to make sure that when students graduate, that the degree that they earned really says the work that they did and what somehow tries to encompass the skills that they now actually have to bring to the workplace.
I guess I have 2 thoughts on that. Surely I hope there's still a BA in journalism, and what does it say about the world that's been converted to advertising public relations?
Oh.
The original programs all still stand. Yes. Yes, those original programs are still in place.
Oh, that's right.
Trends and terminations. From 2012 to 2015, there's been a decline in terminations, obviously, and Dr. Dinley spoke why in 2016 we've seen more terminations than in the previous 4 years combined. But termination authority rests with the governing boards, not here at THEC. The UT system also had a number of terminations, most of those being inactive programs at the Health Science Center. That hadn't been active in several years. So these weren't programs that were active. Now into post-approval monitoring. So we talked a little bit about this. Based on the type or the level of degree, the monitoring cycle is different for how long it takes to really get those programs on their feet, get graduates through them. So the cycle will be different depending on the type of program. But here at THEC, we monitor all new programs, and monitoring is really a collaboration between the institutions to develop benchmarks and enrollment. They do that during the program proposal and approval process. That's how you heard Dr. Knox speaking about those benchmarks that they've created during that approval process. So a total of 61 programs were in monitoring in 2016, 49 of them in standard monitoring, and then 11 had their cycle extended due to not meeting benchmarks in prior years.
And Victoria, so this is what we're going to dig deep on today, right? And just for the commission to know, these are programs that you have seen sometime in the last 5 years, and now we're going to do a health checkup and see where they're at. It feels like, so there are 11 that have been extended?
Yes.
Okay. But this is the bulk of our work over the next short minutes.
Could I ask a quick question?
Sure.
Since you've already interrupted, Mike. When we approve these programs and we say we're going to be watching you and doing this monitoring for 5 years, during which you need to reach benchmarks in terms of graduation rates as well as enrollment. Why then, if they don't reach those benchmarks, did we give them a deadline if we're going to just extend it?
A few things can go on. So something that can happen that will affect enrollment or graduation is, for example, at the University of Memphis, their College of Public Health, you can't apply for accreditation until you already have graduates. So sometimes there's a very understandable reason, and then obviously having accreditation for a doctoral level program is going to be key. So sometimes there's some reasons in place why that make a lot of logical sense. Sometimes just a change in the industry that's there. We've had programs that were open, particularly at community colleges, where there was a partnership with industry, and that industry maybe moved out of the area, and so there wasn't quite that same need. So we saw the drop that would make them not meet those benchmarks. Dr. Dinley, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's lots of things that are going on here, and I mean, one is actually the creation of the benchmarks to begin with. When programs are envisaged, and when you look at a program proposal, part of what the school has to do is to envisage how that program, which they now don't have, will grow over the next 5, 6, 7 years, and then those are the benchmarks which are agreed upon. Well, so I think I try to do predictive analytics for a living, and what I know is that predictions are hard to do. And that there's a sort of a mixture of science and clairvoyance that has to be part of this work. So as you're envisaging how a program might now grow over the next 5 years, it is the case that as part of to propose a program, you at least want to make a reasonable case that there's actually a demand for this program. So there's a sense in which you probably want to err on the side of optimism to make a case that such a program should exist. But on the other hand, there has to be a sort of a sense of realism, because the reality is that if you say, look, we're going to grow by 50 students a year, and you only grow by 10, well, this is the conversation that we're now having. So it isn't always the case necessarily that these programs are not performing at a reasonable rate. They're going to surface in this way if they simply don't meet the benchmarks which they envisaged as part of the program proposal. Now, sometimes it really is the case that the things just didn't go in any way the way that they thought that they did. So, maybe a good example of this is Austin Peay's program. Their master's in engineering tech. They've had a very successful undergraduate degree in engineering tech for quite a long time. And the natural next step was to create a master's degree in engineering tech. This is a hot topic right now. This is the sort of the academic version of advanced manufacturing. This is 3D printing. This is all of that kind of work. It isn't the case that there's no demand for people with masters with engineering technology, but it was the case, and I think Rex Gandy is here, and so he can keep me honest to make sure I do this. That's right. When the program was originally launched, it was housed at Fort Campbell. And that was a perfectly fine thing when that program was envisaged and originally launched. But over the last few years, the security concerns of being able to offer courses and being able to get on base and take courses at Fort Campbell have changed quite considerably. And so to make that program flourish, they've had to take that program and move it to the main campus. Well, clearly that just doesn't happen on a dime. And so consequently, it is the case that that's one of the programs which is on your list for consideration today. But those are the kinds of things that happen. That as happens when you launch a new degree program, sometimes life happens and it's things that you can't envisage. So I don't think that the right way to think about this is that these are programs where, look, if they're not meeting these benchmarks, we should be talking about shutting them down. Instead, there really is a sense in which for each of these, it's digging, and that's kind of the work that we've been doing. It's meeting with these programs, it's digging inside, it's understanding, okay, so what's going on here? Is it the case that we just need to help people know this program exists? Is it the case that we need to be talking about realigning to make sure that, another good example of this is Memphis's program in interior design, where there was a natural affinity between interior design and architecture, which simply hadn't been recognized. And so it was actually really hard for a student to be both an architecture student and an interior design student. And so consequently, there was this kind of unnecessary tension between, and they had to pick and choose. Now they've realigned, and now that program is really flourishing. So it's those kinds of conversations which, that's why I sort of welcome this kind of review, because those conversations would never be precipitated if there wasn't sort of this moment in time that said, yeah, look, we need to talk about this. But it isn't always a sort of a pejorative in that sense. It's more an opportunity, I think.
I think my concern is we just did talk about fermentation science at MTSU, a dance degree at MTSU. We talk about demonstrated need, but I'm not sure we really can demonstrate that need until we float a program out there and we see what happens. My strong feeling is I would watch very closely what happens, because the dollars are limited and we can perhaps serve a whole lot more students in an area that the Tennessee labor force needs than a program that's very weak and hanging by a thread.
I think we all agree.
Okay.
Well, the good news is that about 2/3 of the programs in post-approval monitoring, whether it's the standard monitoring cycle or the extended cycle, are meeting at least one of those enrollment or graduation benchmarks. And the other thing is to keep in mind that that is a snapshot, and there's always a larger story that goes along with that kind of one-time catch of what's occurring in the program as far as students in the pipeline. There are those programs that are not meeting either the enrollment or the graduation benchmarks. 5 of them are in the standard monitoring cycle. 6 are in an extended cycle. Actually, Southwest finished their Advanced Integrated Industrial Technology, finished monitoring in 2016, and will stay in monitoring through 2019 for having not met either one of those graduation or enrollment benchmarks. But of the programs that didn't meet enrollment or graduation benchmarks, these were the ones that were either later in their cycle. So a master's program that's not meeting its benchmarks in year 1 that's a 5-year monitoring cycle. That's less of a flag for us, especially given some of the instances that can occur around accreditation, getting faculty in place, those kinds of things. So this list really reflects programs that are either towards the end of their monitoring cycle or obviously in the extended cycle.
And Victoria, just to hold there, we asked Victoria and Betty to kind of do a little bit of a non-traditional assessment to show you the programs that are of genuine concern at this point. Programs that have already been extended that remain non-productive. Dr. Denley's right, there's a larger story there, but it felt right. We wanted to at least show you a honed list of the ones. A lot of those other programs that you don't see here, the larger story almost mitigates it. You say, well, they're in year one. They haven't met graduation, but who could have graduated by now? This is a real list of programs that I think have had challenges. And some of them, there are conclusions that can be drawn, I think, that Victoria will share. Others, it's probably fair, I think, to have a conversation about what happens.
Just to clarify, and we had a conversation earlier today to make sure. So the
Associate of Fine Arts.
Yeah, so the AAS is not an
AAS
AAS in Fine Arts; it's an AFA in Fine Arts. And what we've recently done is to realign that as part of a transfer pathways approach. So in that sense, I think it's now the case that that's a remarkably different degree than I guess it has been in the past. So.
Dr. Denley, as you've been in these discussions, what's the program on there where the board was worried?
So I mean, I think there's a sense in which we were worried about all of these programs. I mean, initially when you look at the productivity numbers of the programs that are here, you need to sit down and have a conversation and say, okay, so what is it that's going on here? And why is it that that's what's going on? Because the reality is that when each of the programs, I think that the comments earlier are right, each of the programs that are proposed and come through here, nobody ever, it's sort of the same as when we talk about students graduating, nobody ever begins a degree going, I'm not going to complete this, I'm going to drop out. And none of these programs ever go through a program approval process where at the beginning we think, well, this one's going to be a low producing one. I mean, that's just not, that's not the way in which these things unroll. So I think, much of this is about envisaging a future and initially the future that you envisage just doesn't play out this way. And I mean, I can kind of go down this list and I'd be happy to do so if you want me to, but there are stories inside for each one which I don't know necessarily, it's wrong to say that to sort of mitigate or justify, but there are things which simply couldn't have been foreseen. But I think that it is the case that in each of these positions there are proactive steps that have been taken that that are promising for the future. I've already talked about what happened for Memphis' interior design program. I think they now have 51 students in that program. That program has a brighter future than it did if you look back 2 or 3 years ago, where it was more like 10 or a dozen. MTSU's International Affairs program, they have repositioned what that program is about. They had envisaged that international affairs program being about a particular kind of international affairs. And as the world has unfolded, it seems pretty clear that that's not the kind of international affairs that people really are interested in studying. And so they have recognized that, and they have moved now to what I think is a better fit. The Surge Tech programs between Roane and Walters, this is a joint program. Actually, we talked about the joint program that we've just created between ETSU and THEC. This is a joint associate's degree in surgical technology between Roane and Walters, and sometimes joint programs take a little while to unfold, and I think that's what we're seeing there.
They also just got their accreditation.
Yeah, also true. So I think it's wrong to say, well, as I look down this list, as one of them goes, well, I'm really worried about that. But it's also not the case that as I look down this list, I say, well, we shouldn't worry. Let's just wonder. We have taken far from a laissez-faire approach to helping these things happen. But the reality is that sometimes unforeseen things happen. And when that happens, we just need to recognize it early and do something proactive to make sure that we can adjust as appropriate.
Dr. Dinley, if I can, I just kind of want to understand, as you mentioned having the conversation, once you have the conversation, you know there's a story behind each one, and then there's a proactive plan going forward. I guess what I would like to think is on that campus, independent of THEC coming to have the conversation, that they're concerned about it.
Yeah, and I should be clarified. It's not THEC who's having that conversation. It's TBR who's having that conversation.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
So yeah, I mean, and that seems to be and this has been something of an unfolding story. We've really been doubling down on this over the last 3 years, where it is the case that perhaps before the 3 years, that this was, there are many reports which campuses have to do, and this was one of the reports that they had to do, that they collected numbers, and there were programs that were on a list, and then if you're on the list, well, then you have to create fill a little box that says why you're on the list, and you fill the little box. That's not what's been happening over the last 3 years. That now, if you end up surfacing in this way, then a department chair and a dean, they come and they sit down with my office and with the office of the community colleges, and we have an in-depth conversation about what it is that's going on, why is that happening, what are your intentions to do in the future, what are do we need to reposition, and then also, I think that's the thing, that the spirit of that conversation has been somewhat different. That this is not a finger wagging conversation, but more a recognition that if we're about drive to 55, and I think we're about drive to 55, then we need people to graduate in all kinds of different disciplines. And as I've said, all of these programs that were approved, they were envisaged to be vibrant programs when they came here. And so our work really is to try to engage with these faculty to say, okay, so how can we now make this program be the vibrant program that you envisaged when you did all the hard work to create it? And they really value that. And there's been really a tremendous amount of work to reposition, and recognize ways in which programs can partner. I mean, there have been a number of different times when you've had two departments from the same campus who have both been low producing, and during the conversation when they came to us, realized that there was a way in which they could work together to mutually reinforce both of their programs. So it's actually been, there's been a sort of a change in the way in which people have approached this.
Chairman. But, I've been thinking a lot about this, and I think that we could take a lesson from the retail world. Because not only do I look at whether a program's producing or not, but I think, I've been thinking a lot about it. When you walk into the grocery store, they put a Snickers bar where they put it for a particular reason. So they're asking, what do your customers want? They're also likely to be asking, what's the margin on that Snickers bar as compared to a Reese's or a banana? And I think while we need to look at productivity, I think within the higher ed organizations, at the campus or university level, we need to be looking at it more along the lines of, what's the margin? What do our customers want? In addition, you have to say, what does the state need? As you take a look at these programs, that's all really easy to say, but the real reality, and I think Tristan would agree with me, it's really hard in our world to eliminate programs. It just is. It's something people don't like. They have a tendency to get galvanized when you initiate the effort. But I think we owe it to ourselves, particularly if we're saying at UT, look, this is our business model. We've got a cost situation we're trying to contain, and we've got to drive revenue. If we know our customers really want more widget makers, we ought to be producing more widget makers or more spots for them, and perhaps saying in other areas where there's less demand that you do differently. And if the margin on a widget maker is much more than another discipline, that's another reason to think about it. So, we're starting a process of rethinking that kind of stuff.
Great point. I want to ask maybe Mike or Russ, when is the last time our agency has recommended termination of a program? Or has it ever happened?
Yes, it has, and it was regarding
long ago.
Mr. Gregory?
Yeah, just a couple of observations. Number one, Tristan, you answered the question exactly right. Anything that's on the list we should be concerned about. But just a couple of things that think about in the picture. One is when you have brand new programs, there is inevitably a bridge in building up to where you think your projections should be, and that I think is taken into consideration there. But I just want everybody to know there's a marketing effort, there's a building effort, there's an intentionality about building the program. The other thing is, particularly now on the fine arts programs, it'd be interesting to see how many of those students are actually transferring out before they finish their program and going somewhere else. I would say, y'all check me on this, I would say it's a success still if those students remain, if they transfer out, they remain engaged in higher education, they complete a degree. That's our, that would still be in keeping with our public policy. We'd be disappointed when they leave, and we are, but if the student makes it to a credential, we'd say as a state that's a success. So it'd be interesting, particularly on the transfer degrees, how many of those students remain somewhere in the higher education system and persist on to a credential.
Yeah, and that's one of the reasons why we've repositioned that AFA program now as being part of a transfer pathway, and it's always the inherent tension in when we look at community college programs that it is the case that a reality in community colleges that there are going to be students who are, and often very successful students, who work their way through their program and then never complete that associate's degree and move over to the four-year school, but they don't ever get counted until, not that they complete that 60 hours, but until they complete 120, because that's just the way in which we do our accounting. Some of that is now being mitigated by reverse transfer, and so it is the case that over time now many of those students will receive that associate's degree earlier, and so we'll have that more accurate count. But there is that odd phenomenon where you may well have a program which is actually a very successful program, and it's so successful. In this world, it would be a program where you see lots of enrollment, but you don't see people graduating. And I'm not going to get inside and see which one's which, but it could easily be the case that you have many students who are initially in that program, but they don't graduate; they transfer before they graduate, and that's a. I mean, these are in the weeds kinds of comments in data sets.
Okay, so Dr. Denley, thank you so much for bringing that up. The reverse: how does a school meet its graduation benchmark when it did not meet its enrollment benchmark?
So they literally are independent numbers. And so when you look at the program approval, they have a year-by-year accounting of, by year one, of course you probably won't have any graduates, but we would, let's say in year one, we would expect to have 10 students. And then in year two, let's say we're talking about a bachelor's degree, you wouldn't expect any graduates until year four, but by year four, you might have expected to have an enrollment of 50 or 100 or whatever it is. Well, so as I say, these are numbers which are created as this sort of unfolding of that program. Maybe in year four of that initial graduating class, you were expecting to have 3 students. You ended up getting 10. But in year four, you were expecting to have 100 students in the program, and now you have 85. That's how it plays out. Or maybe 99, and you were expecting 100. That's the way it would play out.
You know, the surgical technology programs at Roane and Walter State, they don't worry me a bit because they're in the second year of a 3-year approval process.
Great.
So I say give them another
Right.
year.
That's right.
Those situations to me are not a problem. But I got to tell you, Advanced Integrated Industrial Technology at Southwest, it's in its 3rd year of a 3-year process, and we've said we're going to give them 3 more years till 2019. And you know, you all are the experts, and that's, I appreciate that, and I respect whatever you recommend. But if we say that pre-baccalaureate programs will have 3 years, I think we should stick with 3 years. It reminds me of a very poor parent who tells its child when they do something wrong, I'm going to give you 3 more chances to do that, and then you're going to get in trouble. I'm having a hard time with that one in particular.
So I can tell you what's actually happened for that program. So this is actually part of the realignment process that we've been envisaging. So that program is now part of that larger family of aligned associate's degrees. So work has already happened to realign that program in such a way that it will be intended to be more productive. Certainly, there is a market for people who graduate from that program. There's no question about that.
Following up on some earlier observations, it seems to me as the state has intentionally or unintentionally moved to more tuition-based funding, that the market forces become increasingly more important to the colleges. That in effect you are running a retail, and while we're concerned about all kinds of issues, that the very fact that 60, 65, 70% of your funding is tuition-based, if you don't have those students, the colleges or universities or systems are penalized for themselves, and it's sort of self-regulating, it would seem to me, and that's come more and more to bear. Isn't that true?
I think that's exactly right. There is no prevailing force right now for an institution to prop up a program which is not, to use Dr. DiPietro's analogy,
Snickers bar.
Snickers bar looking better and better every day right now. So yeah, there is no such. Now the subtlety is, and I think a place where we would not want to go, is a program where the state particularly really needs graduates in a particular area, and the margin is really small,
right.
Or perhaps. I mean, we all run programs where the margin isn't a margin at all. It's negative. It's in the red. And so one of the things that we have to think about are ways in which we recognize that there are going to be programs where the state has an extraordinary need,
right.
and we want them to expand it.
Right.
But the reality is that the school certainly will not. There will be no margin on the school side.
I think the other complicating factor is the fact that you still have these general education requirements where you need talent and expertise to do that training too. So it's not real easy.
So you say that market forces kind of drive this self-regulating system, but then on the other hand, you said that it's kind of a galvanizing whenever there's a conversation around terminating a program. Why is that? If it's not, what is the difference there?
Well,
I mean, it's kind of
having been around universities now, I'm trying to think over 40 years, having come up through the faculty ranks at a place in the Midwest, it's really hard for somebody to think their life's work, if you're like an old dog in a department, doesn't have the net worth today it did 15 or 20 or 30 years ago, and that the institution now needs to either figure out how to repurpose that person or to figure out that it may be time to part ways. It's just really hard. And then typically there are students engaged, at least a few, who are at risk, and it's very challenging. And often other departments on campus will argue that they need that interaction and that collaboration to be successful as well. So it's not easy.
Just kind of wanted to get a articulation about why it is so hard to terminate
a profit.
Well, and I think the other part of it is to even in at what point as you're making an investment do you decide that investment is over? And I think it isn't always the case. Even if you think in your own life that is a hard and fast decision, where when you get to the decision that you envisage making in the abstract earlier is not the same decision that you make at the moment where now you have to decide, do you cut or do you not? And the reality is that to think about some of these programs, schools have to make a significant to start a new program is not something which is a sort of a snap your fingers and it's there kind of process. It is the case that there are several years of planning, and then they're going to make investments in hiring faculty, perhaps new resources, new equipment, all kinds of things like that. And now, at what point during that process do you think to yourself, okay, this is not working out the way that we'd hoped that it would, but there's still things that we can do to make it be vibrant and work the way that we might envisage. And at what point do you turn around and say, you know what, this is never going to work, and it's time for us to look elsewhere? And those are not equal kinds. Those are two very different kinds of paths. And so I hope that it's the case that you get the impression that we certainly are not afraid to make a hard decision to say, you know what, it's time to shut something down. And I mean, I guess the fact that we have a goodly number of terminations shows that I mean, the fact is there are programs that have been shut down and reorganized and repositioned to be more effective. But it's also the case that we take seriously the state's investment. And so if there are programs where we feel that that initial investment still needs to be furthered so that we really can get the full return on that investment by working with programs to make a more positive future, then we're also not afraid to do that work too.
Could there be the possibility that there are some additional pieces of information that would be useful to the commission as we look at these programs? I'm thinking, one, when a program is established, there are benchmarks about when additional faculty might be added, additional faculty expertise, additional resources that may be able to be added because of the depth of the student growth. So what do we see with these programs if that's not happening? As far as faculty that are not being added, that perhaps that expertise was going to be growing and it didn't develop. Resources in the library resources or campus resources that did not grow because the program didn't grow. So I guess what I'm getting at is the quality of the program and what is the quality of the experience for the students who are there. And so is there something that we might need that would help us to understand that a bit more fully as we analyze these programs? And the second piece of that, was talking about tracking to 4-year, and I know that is a significant issue that needs to be addressed. If they're going on to a 4-year institution and leaving this program before completion, that's still possibly as successful, if not more so, in the direction that they're going with their lives. But I'm interested in those who are graduating from these programs, how many of them are going into this discipline? And so I think that would be a good indicator for us to know.
So we do track that. So we actually, at least in the 2-year schools, we currently track placement for graduates, and it's actually part of the funding formula. As part of the TBR strategic plan, which for 2015 through 2025, which was approved, I guess, about a year ago, actually envisaged tracking that same kind of data for 4-year schools. In a post-focus world, that may well be a very different picture, but certainly, and actually, there's conversations that we are having right now with the people who run the TLDS for us to be able to have access to that data to really be able to definitively see. So what are the employment prospects and wage earning prospects for students from each particular degree program, so we really can actually see, is it really the case that when somebody graduates from a particular program that they really are finding meaningful employment? And there is a subtlety to what you now do once you graduate that I would encourage you to think about, because sometimes people talk about working in your field, and I often at least think about, are there ways for you to bring your field to your work? I'm a mathematician by trade. Am I working in my field or not? It isn't at all clear that I am working in my field, but I'd like to at least contend that it really is the case that I bring my field to my work. And so that can be awkward, right? So, if somebody graduates in philosophy, if they don't go off and be a professional philosopher, they may still be able to really use the skills that they've amassed in some meaningful way in their work. Or let's say they're a psychology graduate, if they now go into middle management, they may well be able to use the skills that they have learned in some very meaningful way. So it's a complicated thing to think about exactly what meaningful placement might be. Now, on the other hand, if somebody graduates with an associate's degree, an applied associate's degree in information technology, one would probably have imagined that we would like them to go and get a job as a programmer. So there's subtleties to that where that need to be thought through. Certainly, we would be happy to provide whatever data would be useful to help you be more informed.
So I'm sorry.
Is there, I just want to clarify, I'd follow up on Commissioner Coban's remarks and Dr. Denley's remarks. Is there authority for, during an extended monitoring cycle, terminating that cycle at any point where it appears to THEC staff or Board of Regents staff, whatever, whoever the applicable authority is, that it's impossible to meet the goal involved? Let's say that extended monitoring has been granted for a particular program, and let's say that that depends on Dr. X, as the primary faculty member being there, and Dr. X decides to retire after a year, or something like that, has a health problem and can't continue. Then at that point, it's become real apparent that you can't recruit somebody in a cycle enough to get the program up and to its goals in the remaining time allowed. So there's authority to terminate the cycle right then and there at that point. Is that the case now, or am I missing something about this?
When you mean terminate the cycle,
well,
you mean
in the
terminate
sense
the
that
program?
terminate the
Or just stop?
program, yes, that's right.
So-
Terminate the program. That's
so there
right.
is authority to recommending terminating the program. Yes.
Well, I just, wanted to be, clear on that point, that this is not an extension that just continues on until 3 years out or 5 years out, whatever the cycle is. And the other thing I wanted to say is that, it seems to me that we have to rely very strongly on the recommendation of the applicable staff, the TBR staff, the THEC staff, whoever it is that's looking at it from an appellate level above the university or community college involved, and saying whether this is a program that can be made viable or cannot, et cetera, all those factors that go into this. And lastly, I just want to comment, I think there needs to be even more emphasis on approval on the front end of these programs. I think that, as commissioners, that's one area that we do need to be more involved in the sense of thinking about it along with the staff and perhaps developing some approach to that, because during my 8 years on this commission, the commission has pretty much routinely approved applications for new programs of all types. Now granted, they've gone through a staff program, been vetted, et cetera, and all that, but at the same time, we do have a number of them that, as has been pointed out, have been terminated in the end or had to have a extended monitoring, et cetera. So maybe that indicates that there needs to be some more emphasis placed on the approval cycle on the front end.
I don't think that it's the case, and we can go and delve inside. I don't think that it's the case that there recently has been a new program which has gone through its cycle only to be axed at the end of it. Typically speaking, programs that are being terminated are programs that were approved some lengthy time ago and then have come to the end of their useful existence. So I don't think that it's the case that there is good evidence right now that, especially through Betty's office and actually in partnership with Dr. High and myself, we, over the last 3 or 4 years, have actually worked pretty hard to delve into program approval and program review to make sure that on an ongoing basis, new proposed programs have the greatest likelihood of success. And largely speaking, actually, they don't come here if we don't think that they have a reasonable likelihood of success, which is the reason why when they get to you, it's very likely that they'll be approved. So, but I guess what I'm hoping to convey is that we take as seriously as you the creation of a new program, and don't take at all lightly the fact that when a new program is created or proposed, that it really is it's a bargain which is being made between the school and the state. That state funds have to now be invested to create a new capability at that school, and so there is a significant seriousness which is being exercised. I think what we're now seeing is that even in a world of extreme seriousness, it is sometimes the case that things don't go the way that you plan.
And to follow up and clarify just a little further, I mean, obviously success is a criteria and an issue to be looked at, but in looking at the early stages of approval and all that, my remarks were intended as much as anything to say, does it align with the workforce needs of the state? Is it in fact a good use, an excellent use of the state's resources and the institution's resources? All things that staff looks at, and the applicable individuals do. But I just think as commissioners, we ought to be, even more mindful of that, going forward, because There have been approvals, in the past that I'm not identifying a particular one, but I've had questions about whether, in my mind, as to whether they were really extremely helpful in terms of the critical needs of the state and what I knew of the critical needs of the institution. I'll just leave it at that. But, I think that's an important thing to think about even more than we do now.
Sure, we do too.
Mm-hmm.
I would like to say that as it relates in terms of the benchmarks, is that with the new policy that was just approved by you all earlier, is that we have enhanced the feasibility study requirement that institutions will have to address and provide supporting documentation, not just on student interest, but employer demand, labor workforce demand, and also in terms of sustainability. And then we think that coupled with that, along with requiring a marketing recruitment plan, that those two things together, that hopefully we will see those programs really being able to achieve their benchmarks.
And that feasibility study that was mentioned earlier, Treasurer, is the example of that. There's no doubt there's a great deal of trust we place, and the institutions are in turn have trust placed in them by the system that what you're saying is right. We have a lot of people that want doctorates of nursing practice right now, and we think that an external consultant telling us what the state actually needs is a better predicate maybe than we've had in the past.
Mayor Warden, did you have a comment?
At what point does the student know that he or she may be enrolling in a program that's in an extension period? I mean, that's our ultimate question here. I call them customers. They're our students. When do we? It's kind of a catch-22 if you tell students, hey, look, this program may be in trouble, and you're trying to get your enrollment up, but don't we have the obligation to tell the prospective customer that this program may not be here? And certainly when they finish, if the employer looks back and says, where'd you take that? Well, they used to have it if they shut it down.
And again,
Does the customer know is all I'm asking on the front end.
I doubt it. I doubt it to be the case that campuses are advertising from the mass dorm. These are the programs that are on that list. But so in that sense, I mean, THEC documents are public documents, and so in that sense, they are certainly able to go look at that. But again, I'd like to push back on the fact that there is an assumption that because these programs are not meeting benchmarks which were envisaged perhaps 7, 8 years, well, some of these programs are 7, 8, 10 years ago, and now here we are in year 8, and they're not meeting a benchmark which somebody guessed at. And the reality is, to be able to predict something that far out, you really are doing little more than guessing. That they are, 1 or 2 or 3 or some number before that means that this program is somehow an inherent failure. I don't think that's true. So it is the case, of course, that sometimes you have programs which simply don't work. But it's also the case that sometimes you have programs which just simply are not as successful as they were envisaged to be when they were planned, and that's not the same thing at all. So I think it's just the wrong picture for you to have in your head to think that all of these programs are producing one student every other year or something like that. That's not the picture that's happening here.
Also, as it relates to those programs that are terminated, per the THEC COC requirements, institutions have to develop a teach-out plan to require that those students be given the opportunity to complete the program. So even though the program is officially closed for new students, those students that are currently enrolled are provided an opportunity to complete the program.
In fact, the other way around is actually sort of an interesting thing to think about. That when you have new programs on campus, and to use Dr. DiPietro's analogy, it's probably true that initially Snickers bars probably sell much more than a brand new candy bar, because you don't know what it is, and sometimes you never even heard of it, and sometimes you don't even know where to find it in the store. And so there is initially for brand new programs a visibility issue. How is it the case that you let people know the existence of this brand new program, and how do you begin to weave it into the culture of the campus, and how is it that you enable students to be able to make that as a choice? And unfortunately, there's an inherent tension to that, because typically speaking, brand new programs don't have a large amount of resources to go out there and advertise and really make sure that people know. I think that it's the case that we have been able to make inroads with that and as Betty mentioned, there are now obligations to schools to say, look, as part of this, not only is it the case that we need to know that you have the resources to start this program, but we also want you to have a plan to make sure that people can know about it. But these are new obligations. The things that we're looking at right now, although it is now the case that we've had conversations with these programs about doing that work, that when these programs were proposed, there were no such obligations to say, what kind of advertising budget do you have to let people know that this program exists?
I'd like to ask Mike to share or suggest maybe what we could do as a commission to do, I'll say, maybe a better job of monitoring this and being proactive about it. Do you have any thoughts on that?
And let me think out loud. It feels like in serving the commission, I hear a little bit of a communications breakdown in that a lot of work is being done at the system level. And in fact, I think you corrected Secretary Hargett to say, well, it's TBR that's doing this. But that great color commentary around each of these programs isn't making it back to the body that voted to create the program.
Sure.
And so think about how to organize that into a motion of some sort. But it feels like there's a feedback loop here that would be pretty simple to build that would let the commission know, oh, well, we're not worried about that program because.
Here it
and
is.
we generally at the commissioner level have not had access to that.
So could we request a report maybe back next meeting on that? Is that, I'm just thinking out loud also. Is that a reasonable thing to do? Or
Which of these, Betty, are on a program productivity plan already? All the extendeds?
All of the extended and Pellissippi, the health sciences is already in the process of submitting paperwork to the board for termination.
Okay. So yes, I think that's, and I'm looking at Scott, if that's the way.
I don't think it's require formal action, but we can just casually get.
On those standard and the extended, is that what you're thinking?
yeah, I mean that's what I'm thinking, but I defer to my colleagues on that.
Did you say standard as well?
That's what I was asking.
But I think it'd be fine to get both. I don't know why we wouldn't want to get as much as we could.
But
It feels like you have it.
Yeah, I mean, they submit something every year, and so
Sure.
this is really a matter of now taking. It feels to be the case that what's happened, the breakdown in communication is that the plans and so as you described it, the color commentary for each of these programs. These programs are creating that response each year in either because each year they have to do something because they're part of that ongoing report, or because they're on a list because of them being a low producing program. They're creating that meaningful work, but it's not making it to this body. Or on this body, all you're seeing is, well, these are a list of people who made it onto that list, and so. I'm sure that we can take that material and put it together, and then, of course, you can then see the work that's ongoing. That's fine.
I just have a question. It's been my assumption that we're not looking at the complete list of programs that have been canceled. These are only ones that we're looking at. In other words, the colleges or university can cancel a program anytime they want. They don't need our permission to do so. Isn't that correct?
That's right.
Yes.
Of course.
So we're looking at a limited number that we approved and that we have concerns, but the college or university continues to have faith in. Isn't that what we're looking at here?
Right, exactly.
Okay.
So these are programs where, as you say, the school for whatever reason has not chosen this is time to call it a day. They still think that there's something here that they want to keep, and so the question is whether and there is a snapshot issue to this, and as Betty mentioned, the Pellissippi program. So it's not terminated right now, but that process is underway, and so it is the case that sometimes schools they decide to go a different way, and that's fine.
And it feels like we may be one transmittal away from having more confidence in these programs. But if you could communicate that. And if they're on the extended, you likely already have communicated some of it.
Yeah.
But it feels like that would help the commission just understand where we're at. And I would just say it's probably a responsibility that gains even more significance in the focus era, where academic programs are coming directly here without a system. And so if that pleases the chair.
I just want to make sure that the expectation is clear, so y'all know what. Yeah.
Yeah. Transmittal of the information you have that gives you all confidence on the program. Yeah. That's right.
Program that's been approved, that they voluntarily withdrew. Those get included, et cetera, if that's the case. So if we've improved them, or that you have within the last so many years, and they voluntarily withdrew them, if they were on the monitoring, they wouldn't necessarily show up here in this discussion. Is that correct?
That's true.
So it would be good to see that, because that's also an indication that colleges are being proactive about fixing these things before they come to this commission, right?
Right. And we can do that.
Okay. Right. Thanks very much. If there are no other questions on this item, we will call on Dr. Russ Deaton for the revised budgets for fiscal year 2016-2017. Dr. Deaton.
And give you an overview of what is in your materials, item 5, I believe it is.
Thank you, Dr. Deaton, Chairman Cope, Director Kraus, members of the Commission. This is going to be probably the shortest presentation of our budget item that you have experienced in my short time here. I don't even have a presentation, so we're just going to run through the agenda items so that you can get to the more important things like our master plans. And just as a brief reminder, the General Appropriations Act does require that the governing boards, respective governing boards, submit their operating budgets for their institutions to us twice a year, once in July and once in October. And today you will be acting on the October 31, 2016 operating budgets. And as Dr. Deaton said, this is agenda item 5 in your notebooks. Just looking at the overall appropriation picture for our institutions, 16-17 marks the first year where we are back above pre-recession levels. So thankfully, due to the investment of the governor, higher ed is now above the levels of 2007-8 before the Great Recession happened. So in 16-17, the total funding, including TELs, was $1.7 billion for all of higher ed. And this was a one-year change in recurring from 15-16 to 16-17 of about $87.9 million, which represents a 6.4% increase year to year. We often get a question of what does that mean for total E&G? That's about a 2.5% increase over the total E&G. So looking at state appropriations, tuition and fee revenue, other services, and things like that. And that's been pretty steady post-recession. We had a little window there, right? Well, during the recession, it was negative, right? And then a little window right after the recession where it was basically flat. But then in the last 3 years, we've seen about a 2.5% increase of the total E&G each year. That comes due to the state appropriations.
Crystal, can I pause you there?
Sure.
So to put that in context, and Dr. DiPietro, you've raised this before, and so the data that Crystal and the team analyzed, looking at just the additional state investment, we talk about in terms of the percent increase in the state funding, which is appropriate, but also doing it in terms of the total E&G revenue, as Crystal said, to get a sense of that marginal annual additional investment has what impact on their overall bottom line. That's that 2.5%. That's what has been fairly consistent, again, post-recession, as she noted.
2.5 of the E&G.
Of the E&G.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
Which, to your point, is not as large as when we say 6.9%. Really, in the grand scheme of things, it's much smaller than that. And when you think about total revenue, so that's normally what we're looking at as well, is, you know, what is the total revenue within higher education? That includes tuition fees, sales and service, other services, as well as the state appropriations. And we're seeing a continued pattern where institutions and all of higher ed is more dependent on tuition and fee revenue than state appropriations. And this started about 11-12 is when we kicked over from 50% state appropriations to 50% or more at every institution on tuition and fees. In 16-17, the entire higher ed enterprise, state appropriations made up about 37% of total, tuition and fees 53%, and then those other revenue sources about 9.9%, so almost 10% there. And compared to previous years, again, 10 years ago, state appropriations was almost 50%, and tuition and fees was just at 39. So there was a divestment that occurred due to the recession. The good news is we're making some progress. And what we're finding, if you look at 16-17 compared to 15-16, 16-17 is seeing a larger proportion of state appropriations than the previous year. So 15-16, about 35.8% was state appropriations, and again in 16-17 it's about 37%. So when we normally talk about this, we've talked about this in the past, we talk about that pendulum swinging from a dependency on tuition and fees back to having a greater state appropriation or state investment in our institutions. And it's taking a long time for that to happen. We're starting to reap those benefits of having some good budget years as of late, and it's taking a while. And the reason why it's taking a while is because we're talking about a $3.4 billion enterprise. So in order to move those percentages or proportions, it's going to take a large investment over a sustained period of time. So again, in 16-17, $3.4 billion in the entire higher ed enterprise, which is an increase of about $135 million. And just as a refresher, I mean, we're talking about in the last less than 15 years, we've gone from $2 billion. So the first time we were at total revenue of $2 billion across the sector was in 2004, 2005. We then eclipsed $2.5 billion in 2007, 2008. So less than 10 years ago, $3 billion in 13, 14. And we're estimating 3.5 next year. So as an industry, the higher education enterprise revenue stream is continuing to grow. The other side of the coin is always expenditures, right? How are institutions spending that money that they are generating in their revenue practices? And the good news is that we find that our formula and non-formula units are still expending the majority of their funds on the core academic functions, and those are the things we talk about every year: instruction, research, public service, academic support. In 16-17, all of higher ed expended about $2.23 billion on those four pieces. What we are seeing is that proportion is steadily declining over a 10-year period. So 10 years ago, 64.8% of all expenditures were on those core academic functions, and now it's about 62.8%. The news here is, though, that money is being invested in other student services. So that money is being put into scholarships, fellowships, and student intervention strategies on campuses. It's not like that money is flowing into maintenance and operation or institutional support. Those, as a proportion of the total, are not growing or exceeding what they have been in the last decade or so. And so those are strategic investments being made at the institutions for the success of students. So even though that total core academic function appears to be declining over the last 10 years, the money is funneling into things that is actually useful for students as well. So that's the majority of the, again, I told you it was going to be the fastest, but that's the majority of the operating budgets. The other things you'll find in Section 5 are a reminder of our tuition and fee levels for 16-17. That's something that you saw in July. Just as a brief reminder, your role will change as we set tuition and fees for 17-18. We're going to have binding ranges that you'll discuss in May, and that will be for the 17-18 budget year. And then if you're interested, it also includes looking at auxiliary enterprises, which are balanced. There are no institutions that are out of line with more expenditures from auxiliary than they had revenues. And then finally, looking at athletics and the percentage of general fund or generated student revenue associated with athletics, and that's Table 6. But other than that, THEC staff have thoroughly reviewed these operating budgets, and unless there are questions, we recommend the item for approval.
Yes, sir.
What are the anticipated boundaries on tuition again?
Oh, great. So so far what we recommended in November and was approved by the commission.
Still the same?
Yes, are still the 0 to 4% for all units. So for our colleges, universities, and TCATs, we continue to work. A lot of it's going to be determined by what the governor puts out next week. Probably we should be getting a governor's budget, hopefully early next week, and so that will determine the next steps for us. Whether we receive what was recommended by the commission, hopefully even more than that, and that will lead to the next steps within the tuition and fee binding recommendations.
One last question. Remind me again, the total expenditures is what, 3.4
$3.4 billion.
$4 billion.
or that's revenue. I'm sorry, total expenditures was 2.23 billion.
2.2.
Within the core functions.
It's those core.
Yeah, if you
Okay.
if you look, it's, let's see, for everything, and again, I think this is page, yep. So total educational and general expenditures for October 31 was $3.549 billion. So you expended more than you generated. Yes.
I have one question. You talked about the 62% versus 64. Is that declining allocations to academic support, et cetera, and then but that's made up a bit by student services. At what point, based on maybe other states, best practices, et cetera, when does that become a concern?
Well, I think my general understanding, I'll have Dr. Deaton provide comment on this as well, is we always want that to be the academic core to be above 60. And so as we get closer to that 60%, that's when we would start taking probably a closer look at where is that money flowing. Again, making sure that it's not flowing somewhere like maintenance and operation, because that would be an indication we're not doing enough with the fixed costs within the funding formula or capital maintenance through our capital process. And then monitoring it that way. There's also a discussion, I think, to be had about whether or not, because of how our institutions have moved in the last 10 or 15 years, that maybe scholarship and fellowships and student services should be considered a part of the core academic function of an institution. And yeah.
I would also add the student success piece. I mean, if you're going to make an investment in student services around student success and we graduate more students per unit of time, we're that much better off. So those would be outside of that 60%, right?
Yes, and I would point out just that what we're seeing with scholarships in the last 10 years is more than, and this is again just scholarships and fellowships, that the amount of money that the two systems are spending has more than doubled in those individual, in the scholarships and fellowships. And we're seeing similar with the student services. So there are strategic investments in those two categories.
Bill, to your question, the decline from 64.8, I think it was, to the 62.8 in of itself would not necessarily be indicative of an issue, especially when you couple that with the significant growth in scholarships and fellowships. I don't know where that tipping point is, but we don't feel like there's been a deterioration at all. It's more just a natural shifting as other priorities have gotten more emphasis.
Student success is really the measure, and
Yeah.
keeping, yeah. Okay. Thanks.
Other questions? If not, is there a motion to approve the revised budgets?
Mr. Chairman, I make the motion that the Commission approve the FY 2016-17 October 31 revised operating budgets, authorize the Executive Director to make appropriate technical adjustments if necessary, and transmit the revised operating budgets with the Commission's action and comments to the Department of Finance and Administration for their review and approval.
Thank you. Motion is made by Ms. Coben. Is there a second? Second from Mayor Wharton. Ms. Osborne, please call the roll.
Chairman Coe.
Aye.
Dr. Dishner. Aye. Secretary Hargett. Aye. Ms. Kadir.
Aye.
Mr. Lee. Aye. Ms. Coben.
Aye.
Treasurer Lillard.
Aye.
Ms. Roach. Aye. Mayor Wharton.
Aye.
Comptroller Wilson.
Consistent with our policy abstain.
Keith Wilson.
Aye.
Mr. Chairman, we have 10 ayes and 1 abstention.
Very good. Motion carries. Thanks, Crystal. Okay, master plan updates. We will start with Cleveland State Community College.
Mr. Chairman, let me invite President Bill Seymour to join me here on the hot seat, as it were. We're doing things a little bit differently this time on these 4 master plans. In the past, we've had the architects come and actually present the full plan. 2 tweaks this time. First, you'll notice in your materials there is a summary from staff, but along with materials from the plan itself that are highlights of some of the major elements, so you can get a feel for what the actual plans look like, and also to hear directly from the presidents about the plan. We'll do that on all 4 of these. Cleveland State, familiar to many of you, is one of our smaller community colleges. Main campus, Bradley County, 2 off-campus locations, Athens, and then
Monroe County.
Monroe County. It is a 50th anniversary coming up this year, which I'm sure you'll note. Your pin indicates as such, so that's a milestone for the campus. Many of the buildings on that are original, and they're in declining condition, and that's one of the areas of focus of the plan, I think it's fair to say. Also, probably that you're effectively landlocked, the campus is, between I-75 and what amounts to a steep slope that leads to a residential area. So that poses some challenges to you as the plan moves forward. The plan envisions a lot of renovation on the facilities. In fact, the Board of Regents had, and I think it was the number 9 project on the priority list, a project that consisted of several renovations on your campus going forward the next few years. So it is on the radar. It is moving forward. The plan really incorporates a lot of that vision. And Dr. Seymour, we'd love to hear your thoughts about it and answer questions from the Commission.
Great. I'd be happy to. Thank you for having me here today. I've just started my 4th year at Cleveland State, and I found a campus that really had serious needs in terms of its facilities. If you look at our state condition scores, out of 13 community colleges, we rate absolute last. Not a place that we want to be, but I think it's because previous administrations have not done the job that they should have in terms of taking care of our campus. Our annual maintenance fees did not keep up with the deferred maintenance that we've had over time, and now we've gotten to the point where we have some catch up to do. So as we worked with our planner and did studies on our master plan, we found that we have about $45 million worth of major renovations that need to take place. And that's a big number, and we understand that that's a tough job to follow up on. We've also not had a new classroom building on our campus in about 43 years. And so we're looking at ways to revitalize our campus. We know there's many more ways in which we can better serve our 5-county service area. And so the plan that we've developed does not have a lot of bells and whistles to it. It has a lot of renovations of about 7 different facilities on campus. It does call for building the first new classroom building in a long time, as I mentioned. And also, as part of that plan, in the end, as we complete that process, we would take down one of our existing buildings, the one with the lowest condition scores. We believe that the process did a great job of looking at the demographics for our area, but also took into consideration our strategic plan, which I think is very well focused on growing our campus from about 3,500 headcount to consistently over 4,000. We think that can create an economy of scale that will really help us power our budget to achieve the kinds of things that we want to achieve. And a lot of that's going to be driven by improvements in retention and completion, but also new programs that are going to attract students to our campus. And we just announced several new programs locally recently. So we believe that this plan will really make a huge difference. We're happy to be on the TBR capital outlay list. And when that comes to fruition, it will make a major change to our campus. You can imagine what potentially $47 or $48 million could do for our campus in terms of new facility renovations, and will really help this small, mostly rural community college better serve our community. So I appreciate the work that's gone on, working with this commission as well as TBR. We had a very good consultant that worked with us, and we look forward to working on this plan and really bringing Cleveland State into the kind of condition that it should be. And so as we start our next 50 years, we feel confident that we'll be able to serve our community for those next 5 decades.
Mr. Chairman, staff have reviewed this thoroughly, seen an in-depth presentation along with Chancellor Gregory at the Board of Regents, and we would recommend it for approval.
Questions? Appreciate you being here very much. At this point in time, I'm happy to entertain a motion to approve the master plan for Cleveland State Community College. We have a motion and a second. Call the roll, please.
Chairman Cope.
Aye.
Dr. Dishner.
Aye.
Secretary Hargett.
Aye.
Ms. Kadir.
Aye.
Mr. Lee. Ms. Coben.
Aye.
Treasurer Lillard.
Aye.
Ms. Roach. Mayor Wharton. Controller Wilson. Mr. Keith Wilson.
Aye.
Mr. Chairman, we have 11 ayes.
Very good. Motion carries.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Carolyn, I'm sorry, I forgot to tell you that the motion was made by Secretary Hargett, seconded by Treasurer Lillard.
Thank you.
Okay, Columbia State Community College.
Columbia State, and I'll ask Dr. Janet Smith to join me up here as we get into hers. Columbia State's campus is familiar to many of us, particularly the Williamson County campus, which is new and hosted several THEC functions over the years. There's a theme on these next 3 because a part of the service area for Columbia includes some of the fastest growing counties in Tennessee, in this case, Williamson County. And so your campuses are well located to take advantage of that growth. This focuses really on the main campus because of the newness and previous attention devoted to the Williamson County campus. I think it's fair to say that you're thinking a lot about the main campus on this one. The number 8 project on the capital list from November is the renovation of Finney Library. That's envisioned in the plan, so that's a project that has been vetted here and is familiar to you. Also envision a new health building as well, new entrances and signages, a lot of things that really add to the aesthetic value and functionality of the campus. And so, Dr. Smith, would love to hear your comments about the plan.
Thank you. Thank you all. Pleasure to be here today. First off, let me go back to the Williamson campus, and one of the reasons, too, we did not include that. It is growing, and in about 3 years from now, we'll really need to go back and do a master plan on that. We did a long-range master plan, the use of the land and where we're growing there, and we do have needs that we've identified in terms of parking. It's a huge issue for us. But the master plan, we dealt with the main campus, the Columbia campus, which is the oldest campus in the state. Our buildings go back to the mid-'60s, and some of the ones that were most of the ones we're dealing with were 1972 vintage as well. We have 3 buildings on the campus that were identified that are in strong need of renovation. They're at the lowest level. We have 2 buildings that have identified need to come down for a new allied health building to house all of our allied health programs and the growing allied health we have in that area. We are the heart of providing medical care for South Central Tennessee, and through Murray Regional and the many growth there. That's just a huge growing area for the college. In regards to the outside spaces, one of the things that we are finding, is just not us, is it's all across the nation. Student engagement is extremely important, both inside the buildings and outside the buildings. Places for students to come together, commons area where they can talk. Even if they're sitting there talking to each other by their phone, they're together and having some kind of engagement. And as we built the new Williamson campus, we built a lot of that in. So we've had opportunity to observe how it impacts the student, how it keeps them on campus. And that's a big part of what we know, that if we keep them on campus, then the success level goes up. So a lot of our plan is also about improving outside spaces and inside spaces for student common area, for them to get together, to work together, to talk to each other, and to study together. We're very grateful for the opportunity to do the master plan, to look to the future, where we're going again for our next 50 years as well, and how we build a plan that is about providing strong instructional spaces that meet today's students and today's student expectations, as well as strong engagement areas for our students.
Thank you, Dr. Smith. Mr. Chairman, again, this one's been reviewed thoroughly, and we recommend approval.
Questions of Dr. Smith or Dr. Deaton? If not, is there a motion?
Move approval.
Motion approved by Comptroller Wilson. Is there a second? Second from Secretary Hargett. Ms. Osborne, please call the roll.
Chairman Cope.
Aye.
Dr. Dishner. Aye. Secretary Hargett. Aye. Ms. Kadir.
Aye.
Mr. Lee.
Aye.
Ms. Coben. Aye. Treasurer Lillard.
Aye.
Ms. Roach.
Aye.
Mayor Wharton. Comptroller Wilson. Mr. Keith Wilson.
Aye.
Mr. Chairman, we have 11 ayes.
Very good. Motion carries. Next, we have Montlow State Community College, Smyrna campus.
In contrast to Columbia, the Montlow State Community College Master Plan really focuses on the Smyrna location. The main campus, I think, is projected to not grow much, if at all, over the years, but Smyrna is in the greatest growth corridor probably in the state. In fact, I think Rutherford County, I think, is projected to grow the fastest over the next 10 years or so. So it is well positioned in the future. Smyrna campus, and Mike, you've said this before too, probably was overcrowded the moment the first building opened. It has had extraordinary growth over the last 10 years or so, to such a degree, and in the presentation from the architects, I remember the observation was made that the space analysis data sometimes gets kind of weird by what's going on the Smyrna campus because they are teaching classes in labs. And so when you look at uses of the building, it sort of throws off the data because they're so crowded and they're using every square inch of what they have now to educate students, to their credit. The plan envisions growth benchmarks, up to 3 new buildings, really creating a campus feel, not unlike Williamson County on the Columbia side. And this plan, again, really gets at the heart of what the campus needs. And Dr. Kinkle, anxious to hear your thoughts and observations on it.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman and members, Mr. Director, chancellors. Honored to be with you. This is my first time I've been able to attend a commission meeting, and I'm thrilled to be here. I want to simplify for you. The number one reason I'm here is the massive and unprecedented growth in Rutherford County. Just using your own THEC space analysis, this fall we were at 38% of the space that we needed to serve the students already in our door. If you look out to 2025, and our planners have done a really careful analysis, we're going to add, if our market penetration stays the same, another 900 high school graduates will be coming to Motlow and another 700 or so adults. So add that to the already, we're at 38%, and you've got a colossal challenge. Now, we're having classes on Sunday after church. We're doing it at night. We're doing it online. We're looking for space. I've got to call in to my good friend at the TCAT in Murfreesboro. We're trying to partner a lot more with the TCAT. We might even have to lease some space with them. It's at a critical stage. So we're so thankful that you would consider allowing us to modify our strategic plan to reflect that growth. So, Mr. Chairman, I would ask for your consideration.
Sure. And Dr. Deaton, which of these buildings went forward on the THEC?
It's building 3.
Building 3. Okay, you'll recall that was our number one priority.
Yeah, number one priority.
If I can, I had the opportunity to visit Smyrna campus recently and was with Dean Fitch and heard about the Sunday classes being taught. And if I understand, there's even some really, not just night classes, late night classes.
Yes.
That you're teaching now. I was amazed, and Lord knows y'all got growing pains there. So I would move to approve.
Thank you.
Second.
Dr. Kinkle, but before we vote, I was looking at the color rendering of the proposed buildings, and the master plan has building 3, 4, and 5. And you may have mentioned this in your opening remarks, but based on the growth that's projected, how long will that sustain you?
Mr. Chairman, my understanding is if we are successful this year, and if the governor puts this Smyrna building in his bill and the legislature approves it, it still will only take us to 50% of the space we need. So I would welcome a motion for building 4 and 5, Mr. Chairman, you being from Rutherford County.
I know. Well, I was going to try to slip that in, but I think
What a heck of a first appearance.
Yeah, you like that. You got everything you asked for and more. So. Very good. Well, thank you very much, Dr. Kinkle, for being here. We have a motion, Secretary Hargett, a second, I think, from Ms. Coben. Very good. Ms. Osborne, will you call the roll, please?
Chairman Cope.
Aye.
Dr. Dishner.
Aye.
Secretary Hargett. Ms. Kadir.
Aye.
Mr. Lee. Ms. Coben.
Aye.
Treasurer Lillard.
Aye.
Ms. Roach.
Aye.
Mayor Wharton.
Aye.
Controller Wilson.
Aye.
Mr. Keith Wilson.
Aye.
Mr. Chairman, we have 11 ayes.
The motion carries. Okay, the last community college on the agenda master plan is Nashville State Community College.
Dr. George Van Allen. Nashville State is our largest campus and the fastest growing of the last decade. The main campus has had some significant capital investment the last 15 years or so. I think 3 new capital outlay projects, and the campus looks beautiful, all of them do, but the new buildings there really add to it. Nashville has a large footprint, and you've got campuses now from Clarksville, Waverly, and in the Hickory Hollow Southeast market as well. One of the hearts of this plan, Mr. President, I hope you comment on this, is the need for East Davidson County, North Davidson County, and even the Clarksville site expansion, where there are the market's already there. That demand is there. Again, Davidson, I think, is the second fastest growing county projected over the next 10 years. And you sit right in the heart of that, of course, in your service area. So the plan really focuses on where you can go meet people where they are, where that demand is. And again, this plan really gets at the heart of what Nashville needs, and anxious for your comments on it, Dr. Van Allen.
Thank you. My first comment is we're not asking for any money. These two proposed campuses are going to be built with college funds. We're very happy with our financial situation. We're happy with our master plan. And as Russ said, what we're trying to do is develop Davidson County. Davidson County is large enough to be a multi-campus region, much like Charlotte-Mecklenburg. And in the end, we hope to have 4 campuses. That'll take a lot of pressure off the main campus. And as you know, if you buy and renovate space off the main campus, your return on the dollar is much greater. The example I give is Antioch. We developed the Hickory Hollow Mall, spent $6 million, got 40,000 square feet. If we did the same thing on its main campus, that 40,000 square feet would probably cost $40 million. So this is a very good investment of money. It'll have a tremendous impact on the county, on the city of Nashville, and hopefully on Nashville State. So since I'm not asking for money, I will entertain a motion. I can't entertain a motion.
You don't get to do that. Yeah. I'll move to approve. Yes, sir. Secretary Hargett. Second from Dr. Dishner. Ms. Orsborn, please call the roll.
Chairman Cope.
Aye.
Dr. Dishner. Aye. Secretary Hargett. Aye. Ms. Kadir.
Aye.
Mr. Lee. Aye. Ms. Coben. Aye. Treasurer Lillard.
Aye.
Ms. Roach.
Aye.
Mayor Wharton.
Aye.
Comptroller Wilson.
Aye.
Mr. Keith Wilson.
Aye.
Mr. Chairman, we have 11 ayes.
Okay, great. Motion carries. Yes, sir.
I just, on point of privilege, I just want to say a word of gratitude to constitutional officers. And we'd hoped we could bring Vol State here today, but they gave us a dispensation to use the same planner to look at this sort of Middle Tennessee service area. And I'm grateful for that, because what you see today is kind of some consistent analysis of Middle Tennessee as a service region, and I'm grateful for that. And I wish we could have brought Vol State so you could have seen the entire picture together, but the Building Commission gave us the ability to do that. And we haven't done that before, and I think the product is good.
Good. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
Yep. That's great.
I assume I'm excused.
You may
Thank
be.
you.
Sure. Thanks.
Just to the commission, I want to say Mr. Wilson brought up a point a couple times during his service on the commission, which is master plans are hard to ask a lay board to vote on. It's very difficult to present you with the information you need to thoughtfully consider what is a pretty massive plan. I enjoyed hearing from the presidents today, to be honest, and I appreciate their time. I preferred it to an architect's presentation. Our next step, though, and our commitment to you is, as we have master plans come before the commission member representing the area nearby, we will go walk that campus.
Good, yeah.
I need to do it. Our facilities folks, and by the way, we enjoy doing those things. And so hopefully, next time you vote on a master plan, you'll have one of your fellow commissioners to give their perspective. So
I appreciate that, and I really did enjoy the tone of the presentations this time. I'm not an architect or a logistics person. So I think I do presentations, though. I've done them my whole life, and 80% of it needs to be on the strategic goals, the strategic vision of that campus, and then 20% on how that plan relates to our strategic goals and opportunities on that campus. And I think if the presidents can do that, et cetera, it allows this body to engage in a much better way. Thank you.
Good. Okay, the last item on our agenda for the day is the capital outlay prioritization. Dr. Deaton.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is a discussion item, and to give you some background on this before what I will hope will be sort of an organic discussion, one of the areas of primary policy importance to the Commission is how we prioritize capital investments the state ought to make and recommend those to the Governor and General Assembly. In the pre-focus days, that was a simpler task than it will be next year when we are dealing with what amount to 8 priority lists from the 6 LGIs and the 2 systems. That coupled with the fact that it's been about 20 years since we've really thoughtfully and holistically revisited the capital prioritization scheme, those 2 facts sort of necessitate a relook at what we're doing and why. It's probably time too to think about new factors that ought to be incorporated as projects are prioritized, as investments are made, beyond the ones we use now. Timing-wise, the reason this is coming before you today for discussion is, well, a couple reasons. First is, as we're looking forward already to the 2018-19 cycle, I guess it is, which we'll consider in full November of this year, the capital process has already begun on the campuses. And so to give those institutions and systems a sense of what target to aim at, if you will, we have begun thinking through what that new prioritization process ought to look like, what policy imperatives are central to that, to begin again to give people a chance to plan. The intent is among the staff is to bring you back in May at your next meeting a fully fleshed out policy, which would then be active again for that 2018-19 cycle. But in the meantime, to have something where, again, planning can begin for what criteria will begin to matter more or less as projects are developed. So at the staff level, what we've started to do is sort of really go back to Capital 101 and just think through what do other states do? How do they tackle this question? Is there best practice that exists? Short answer is there's not. What do other states do? How do they think through this process? To that end, we've also gathered an internal advisory group, perhaps one of the more eclectic groups we've ever gathered. It has provosts, it has CFOs, it has facilities managers on campus, along with academic and finance staff at the system level. Again, just to think through how the state should think through this challenge. Again, what should be on the table to think about, what should get removed, how you make sense of all those competing priorities, and to eventually recommend to us, we can recommend to you how the commission ought to tackle this issue. That group has met a couple of times already, again, just sort of trying to take stock and get our arms around what the issues are. We have solicited the services of a man who I refer to as the Dennis Jones of capital across the nation, which I think he takes as a compliment. His name is Art Litsky, and he's familiar to the Board of Regents staff, done several master plans across their system over the years, and is generally recognized as an expert in this field. He has agreed to just help us think through this challenge and is a joy to work with. Again, so we've met twice and begun to think through what's the framework of this decision. And again, what's before you today is not any sort of final policy. It is instead basically the raw materials of a policy. Again, that we can begin to say to systems and campuses, this is the direction we think the commission is moving in as you plan, again, a fully fleshed out policy in May. And so what's in the agenda item, the last one in your books, item 7, is a summary of kind of what I just said, but also, again, those dozen or so major principles that have emerged from our reflection, from our discussions across the state and with that advisory group about what ought to matter in the capital process. And that's what's before you here. And Mr. Chairman, if I may, maybe I'll just kind of talk out loud about a few of them. Please. And hopefully get some reaction from the members about, again, whether these really should be the direction we ought to go in, or if not, course correction, we could begin moving in another direction. Of course, one of the central ones is the connection of a project to state and institutional goals. That seems obvious, but we've never actually written that down, and this is something this body has expressed before about the desire to have that, and whether that requires us to more fully detail what exactly those Drive to 55 hooks are that you can put that ornament on. Perhaps that's necessary, but that's one of the central ones that is here. Also, too, not thinking just about the state needs, but couple that with what the campus's mission is, what its master plan envisions for that campus, kind of how to marry those two features also as an important aspect that has come up. Some
Deaton, do you want comments as we go on each one of these?
That'd be fine. Sure.
So I think under item 1, is outreach captured?
I think it should be. It's not here, but it should be, particularly for the non-formal units. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Somehow you need to look at outreach.
And one thing we do, Dr. DiPietro, later, and we'll do it here too, is note that really any higher ed entity ought to have a fair shot at being the top priority. And so that's an important principle, but we'll also lay that out here for the outreach function. Mm-hmm. Sorry. No, that's fine. This is good.
What we hope
happens.
happens.
We hope to happens, yeah. mean, these can broadly be broken down into quantitative and qualitative things. There's some quantitative things we think we ought to measure: space needs analysis, which you heard from the presidents and the plans, condition of facilities, things like that. But there are also, to Dr. DiPietro's point in these first two, some qualitative aspects that we think ought to be judged and scored, which will be harder. But those things, it seems to the process so far, ought to be in the capital prioritization scheme, as opposed to sort of a strictly numerical assessment of the projects. There are some judgments that ought to be made as we think about how projects fit within the scope of the campus and state goals. Is there reaction, objection, endorsement of that? Agreed. Thank you, Pam.
What have been the challenging points, Russ? And again, Russ is being modest, and several, I saw Robbie Stivers and Dick. This has been a multi-month, in-depth process sitting in this room, and I think what have been the challenge points that I think might help the commission start thinking about? I mean, when we think about the tough decisions ahead.
Yeah. Well, and
Number one, tradition.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, you know, we've enjoyed the circumstance of a certain percentage of these dollars every year, and the University of Tennessee would like that to continue.
I think that's the biggest challenge.
That's probably the biggest challenge. I think the match is another challenge. And, you know, that has two edges to it. It's item 6, right? External funding. So we've got people queued up who have given us gifts that are expecting us to get it done, who are in the pipeline, and then some decision about whether the match continues or not as a necessity. And last year during the session, we also had the precedent-setting circumstance at Martin, which helped get Dr. Carver out from the standpoint of reduction of match by legislative action. That's likely to become more prevalent, in my estimation, as opposed to less. So something has to be done about it. And I would agree that qualitative and quantitative factors have to be key. Some measure of size and scope has to be part of it. You know, I wonder in the other factors issue whether under item 3, what kind of unique circumstances would cause the commission or board or the commissioners to think about it to change the priority of our board of trustees. I mean, our board is going to say to me and the rest of the university, here's our priority. And we agree with you. We're going to say to them, here's our priority, and they're going to say back to us, we agree with you. Or they might say, we debate that and we want to rearrange it. And then under what kind of unique circumstances would the THEC commission decide that they want to change that?
Those are all.
And then,
go ahead.
Then I'll be quiet.
No, go ahead.
And I'm sorry, I also have a meeting at the Capitol at 2 o'clock, so if I leave, I'm not mad. I'll put Ron Maples in this seat, our treasurer. But
Go ahead, Joe. You
I
got
think,
plenty of time. Go ahead.
yeah. I think the other
for you.
piece that continues to plague us, not only with this policy-making group, but others in our capital, is the notion that every time you build a new building, you should reduce other square footage so you stay sum zero. And it's really difficult to do that. I mean, in many cases, our institutions are undersized from the standpoint of space. We have a new building come up, and to pull something offline, it happens occasionally, but frequently it's repurposed for another activity. A good example would be the infirmary at the Knoxville campus. Built a brand new infirmary, utilizing institutional funds. The old infirmary, I don't know how many people wanted that, including Chancellor Schwab at Memphis for a speech and audiology clinic. And it's been repurposed for student life. So really, it may be hard to conceptualize in the business world compared to a university that you continue to grow in net assignable square feet. And we have to be held accountable for that, but I think it's not always possible to reduce it. And I like the approach. And I like the fact that you're listening and that our team of people is engaged in the process.
I guess I'm kind of, not by age, but maybe the longest. We've had all of these discussions before. And with respect to when does THEC revise or change your priorities, we had that question many times before, and we had three baskets, and one was something that was extraordinary but not contemplated between the time that you submitted it. The best case that we always used was when the tornado struck the Austin P campus. I mean, who could argue with the fact that in the course of one weekend, the whole priorities had, so if we just listed in some extraordinary circumstances, only in extraordinary circumstances do we change your priorities. And I've only seen one extraordinary circumstance, and that was it over the course of 2020. With respect to existing facilities, I think as long as we see that adequate thought has been given to that. We've had situations in which adequate thought was not given to that. For example, the new library on the University of Memphis campus, they have that high-rise library. We authorized a new library, and then everybody said, well, what are you going to do with the other one? They said, well, we don't know yet. I think they ended up tearing it down, I believe they did. But as long as we see, whether we agree with it or not, as long as we see that adequate thought and consideration has been given, if you want to leave it as is, if you want to mothball it for 1 year, 2 years, then tell us that's what you're going to do. But do not come to us with, we're going to figure that out later.
That's fair.
Yeah.
I mean, we have a good example. Library there. That's the way it should work.
Give you a little more perspective too on one of the core issues we're having, and we learned this as we talked to other states and other private schools who deal with the same issue. Many states essentially punt this question. They don't try to have a prioritized list of projects, which frankly sort of stunned us as a staff when we were going through this. They basically evaluate whether projects are worthy of funding, don't try to prioritize them, and kick them over to political leadership to decide what to fund. I don't think that's where we would like to go as a staff, and unless directed otherwise, we'll still produce for you a prioritized list of projects. But that's just one example of sort of a first-order policy question that many states don't even try to answer, but we feel like we should still, because we always have.
Lastly, and then I do have to go. I would tell you that I'm very pleased with the governor and the General Assembly to allocate monies in this area with relatively great consistency compared to many other states that I've worked in. And so the reality of having this concern or the need to do this is actually a very, very good thing, because many, many universities and many, many state universities don't have the latitude of the kind of support we've had, and for that we're very appreciative. And with that, Ron can jump in this seat, and you all can continue to deliberate. Thank you.
Thank you for being here.
So I agree with much of what Dr. DiPietro has said. I might have just a little bit slightly different take on the existing building piece of this. If priorities are going to connect back to overall strategic planning and back to the institution's master plan, I think we need to be expecting a look at efficiency of operation in our facilities. Part of the pushback that we get is you ask and ask and ask, and how do we know you're taking care of the assets that you have? We're 50 years old, if you've heard today in community colleges. We're 100-year-old in the universities, and quite frankly, some of the construction in our 100-year-old buildings is better than some of our 50-year-old buildings. It's just the nature of the way some of those buildings were built. So I do think at some level consideration has to be given to the institution who makes the hard choice of saying, in asking for bringing this building online, these buildings are coming offline. You've seen that in our request for Tennessee Tech, most recently in TSU, most recently, where new buildings are not net zero in square footage, but there is a reduction. And when Dr. DiPietro and I left, the last thing the governor said to us in the budget hearing was, make sure you're paying attention to how efficient you can deliver services. And so while I don't disagree with what he said, because it's a very difficult thing to do, I do think some consideration, Russ, into the criteria. Not that you take something offline, but that you're in compliance with your planning process, which does take into consideration the most efficient delivery methods, if that at all makes sense. Let me stop there.
Let me ask for a reaction to this idea. Oh, Treasurer.
One comment I would have as a member of the state's fiscal team is that, as Dr. DiPietro said, Tennessee has enjoyed some consistency in funding compared to many other jurisdictions, and that's been a blessing in many, many ways. I'd also observe that I think the prioritization process, and I'm just speaking for myself now, is important and remains to be something that we should be doing with refinements as indicated by the work that the committee's been doing and this commission will do, because this is a time of unprecedented change in higher education in Tennessee, and there are various forces that can be unleashed by simply not having a process that includes prioritization here, and those are not necessarily constructive forces in all cases. So I think that in order to keep us on track in that regard, I think this process is important. Refinements should be done to it and all, but I know there have been some that have argued that we should just, in effect, not have a prioritization process, but I don't think that would serve us well in Tennessee in higher education, and it's important, very, very important.
Nor do I. I think part of the reason you're finding states punt it is because it is such a difficult thing. Yeah.
Well, but as President Kennedy once said, we do these things not because they're easy, but because they're hard, and so you agree with me on that. But, I mean, I think it's very, very hard, but it's made a big difference for the positive in Tennessee, and I just want to see that continued.
One thing to think about on the match is match becomes opportunistic from time to time. It pops up, and it creates an inherent conflict sometimes between what is an opportunity and what is a priority. And that's a hard thing many times for presidents to make a choice on. Here is an opportunity that if I don't take it, it's going to go away, but it doesn't actually mean it's my priority. And so in some ways we have to be careful that the match program doesn't sort of prostitute the priority program. And I feel like the priority program, the priority ought to be what we think about the most. But, it's just one of those inherent things in there that it can sort of cause your vision to get a little bit skewed.
Mayor Wharton?
That, again, from the perspective of history, that's really astute. We've had any number of situations in which year one, the priority is renovating or putting a roof on building A. The second priority was demolishing building B, and then on down. All of a sudden, somebody comes in and says, "Look, I'll make a gift to the college if you will expand building 6, which is way, way down." And all of a sudden, the campus comes in and wants to pull item 7 all the way up to item number 2. And that does happen, and it will happen, because, as you say, there's an opportunity there that's only going to last for a while. And we dealt with that before. Basically, we said only in, again, extreme extenuating circumstances will you be allowed, if you've really thought through your process and figured out your priorities, one gift should not skew your priorities if it's truly priorities. And I think that's where we are duty-bound to raise a flag on that. And I think we should have incorporated in our policy that there's going to have to be extreme justification for skewing your priorities that way.
And that's a good Good. And linking that back to the campus's master plans
Right.
is a pretty direct link to that, I think.
Well, let me speak for opportunity for just a moment then, because need is historically focused and opportunity is futuristically focused. And as a business person, and having gone through this for 40 years, opportunities are really the things that focus around growth, about moving forward on things that we should be considering out. Now, I don't disagree with what's been said. You can't let that dictate everything. But I would hate to see you put together a program that didn't recognize there are unique opportunities that, may have a very short window of time to take advantage of. And those opportunities ought to be heard and duly considered. They shouldn't take priority, but don't leave opportunity alone. Go after it when it's there and it has a real chance of making things grow for you.
I think we saw that with the music building at the University of Memphis just a few months ago.
Absolutely.
Russ, am I correct that you are planning to come back to us with sort of a completed version of this at our next meeting?
Yes.
But between now and then, it's still in discussion phase and
Very much. Yeah.
Okay. This would not be something you would be utilizing in training the new individual boards. They don't need
Not
to
at this
worry
level,
about this.
yeah.
Okay.
Allied to that, though, I'll just say the hope of today's discussion. I had a chance to meet with one of the nominees to the new boards yesterday, and I asked him, "What's the most important thing about to go onto this new board to you that THEC can do?" And he didn't miss a beat. He said transparency. And so the hope today was, I mean, truly, here we are, and in a round of 4 or 5 months of meetings where everybody knows where we think THEC should go in this process. So our hope was to give the commission a read, and also the systems who sit with us, to say, this is what we're thinking. And also, we know we'll come to a finished product over the next couple months, and then we will vet that back out again, obviously, before recommending adoption. There's a lot of complex levers here, and we've walked through a few of those just now, but I will give both systems and our team an A for just trying to work through this and not throwing up your hands and saying, we're just going to send over a bunch of lists to the General Assembly and let them lobby it out. So I think we'll get there, and when we do, we owe that first to the commission to agree that's the direction you seek, then to the systems and the locally governed institutions. And this is one of the things that when the Focus Act was proposed, people really trembled about. I think we should always be mindful of it. I think we're really close, though, to something that's going to work well for every party.
I respond to, I'm sorry, Mr. Wharton, go ahead.
We're taking this up at the end of our agenda today, and I'm sure that by no means reflects any sense of, oh, this is not much of a priority. Let me just say this, after 20 years or so here, this is the one area in which we will end up in just plain old raw, hot political fights. And for that reason, everything that we do, Mike, transparency has to be at the top. You see, it's hard for John Doe to ride down the street and see whether you're making progress on your academic offerings. But everybody who drives by a campus, or drives by two campuses, if I drive by Tennessee State this afternoon and I don't see any cranes up there, and then I ride over to Murfreesboro and I see 5 cranes, I'm an expert. I'm an expert. It's just a shame that they're doing everything for Middle Tennessee State and they're not doing anything, or University of Memphis when I get back home. Everybody becomes an expert on that. And that's the way it can play out politically. So, again, when we get to this, even if we have to have a one-item agenda on priorities, it is well worth it. And I would just, again, based on history, we really need to sleep with this. Don't rush anything on this because this will be the most visible part of what we do and the hottest politically of what we do. Again, because it's so visible. a new dorm is visible, everybody can see it and they determine progress by what they see. So I just, again, encourage us to spend as much time, use as many experts as we can, spend as many hours with the various universities and colleges on this, because this is the area that's most fraught with potential for trouble.
Russ, do you see this list changing? Do you see yourself adding any other factors to this? And then secondly, when we see it again, do you anticipate putting these in ranked order of importance?
Don't envision there being any new significant elements added. In some ways, this is almost exhaustive of the major elements we've thought through. So I don't see anything new being added. And again, unless there's something that emerges today. I think what we see in May is we bring back a refined, not only a policy, but almost like the rubrics for here's exactly how projects would get evaluated. Here's the quantitative elements that would matter. Here's the qualitative ideas that we would look for. Again, that can't be really quantified per se, but we'll go into that final judgment. An actionable policy that, again, will be used in November is what we envision to bring you in May. And so we view this as this is the map, or this is, we want to go to Cooperstown, New York with this. I don't know the exact roads to take yet to go visit that place. That's where the Baseball Hall of Fame is. But that's what we'd like to yeah, thank you, Chancellor. Yeah. But that's what this is where we'd like to go. We'll get the exact directions in May. That's what we look at as this today. So we're sort of seeking affirmation that we're moving in that right direction today.
You know, I have a question because it just occurred to me, so I'll extend the meeting.
Last meeting privilege.
Yeah, last meeting privilege. I have heard several times that there is a THEC sort of standard on facilities and space and et cetera, et cetera. But, you know, as I reflect on my own industry and the industry I think higher education has become, I wonder if we have a technology infrastructure standard for these colleges as well. I suspect going forward, and I know in my industry going forward, that you can have a pretty crappy building, but your technology infrastructure and how that's constructed and how it runs and how it operates better be top quality. And I don't know if there's thought or consideration on that or not, but technology is capital. And technology infrastructure standards, I suspect, for our colleges and our universities ought to be considered somehow, some way. I'm not the person to do it, but there are people who can help with that. And I think that's something that we ought to kind of take a look at. There is clearly coming a conversion, and the technology infrastructure is expensive. Okay.
One of the beauties of having Art Litsky, that consultant on this, is he's the one who designed our space planning standards. He's the exact right person to first pose that question to, so we will dig into that.
Russ? Other questions, comments? Okay. Mike, did you have anything? We're at the end of our agenda, so I don't...
Commission, look forward to presenting you details of the governor's State of the State address. Will be Monday evening. You'll receive an email the next morning that will detail the budget proposal relative to higher education. So we certainly look forward to providing you those details. We thank OW. We had a bit of a parking fiasco last meeting, which OW successfully defended. He personally held 20 spots this entire meeting, so thank you for that.
He deserves a round.
He does. That's right. OW. And as always, thank you to Corsania, Carol Ann, and Rosie, who kind of run these meetings and put them together for us. Our next meeting is May 11th. Look forward to seeing you then.
Having no other business, the meeting is adjourned.
Thank you, Betty.